everybody. Recognizing a quorum, I am calling this meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission to order at 10:30 a.m. on June 26, 2018. Can I ask, can everybody hear me in the back? Great. Commissioner Doyle is joining us today remotely. Commissioner Doyle, could you just say something so that people can ascertain whether they can hear you or not?
Good morning, everyone.
Can everybody hear Commissioner Doyle? Yes. Great, thank you. Can I ask, is this meeting being recorded? Surprise. A little fewer cameras and microphones than last week, but in any case, let me put the public on notice that this meeting is being recorded. Can I ask everybody please to put their cell phones on silent or shut them off, please? Thank you. Let's get going. Because Commissioner Doyle is dialing in remotely, any votes that we take today will be done via a roll call. So, thank you for calling in, Commissioner Doyle. Those of you.
Thank you for letting me.
I don't think I had an option, did I?
Not so much.
No, not really.
Those of you that were astute observers of the agenda that we posted last week will notice that there are no license applications that are on the agenda today, and the simple reason is that it was just an incredibly quick turnaround from our meeting last Thursday until today. So just to set expectations, we have scrambled a little bit just because next week is a short week because of the holiday right in the middle. But we have managed to find a time that works for everybody, so I'll give you the details at the end. But we will have a meeting on Monday, and my expectation from the executive director is that we will have a handful of licenses to review. Is that correct?
That is the hope.
I said expectation, I didn't say certainty. Your hope is my expectation, or vice versa. In any case, so we will have another meeting on Tuesday, or excuse me, on Monday of next week. But we did have this meeting on the agenda, and I thought it was important to keep the meeting because we have after we go through the normal updates, we have one very important topic to go through, which is the social equity program. You're all aware of how critical this is as part of the legislative mandates that we have. It's something that each of the commissioners takes incredibly seriously. We are going to be evaluated on our performance, and if our performance is not up to snuff, we will have to go back to the legislature and say, here's what we're going to do better. So this is an incredibly important topic, and given that there are no licenses on the agenda that distract us, I thought it would be good to keep this meeting as scheduled and have no distractions, literally, other than talking about our social equity program, what the goals are, what the objectives are, how we're going to accomplish those objectives. There is an RFP to be reviewed that we'll discuss and vote on, and hopefully approve and send out post-day. So that's really the primary agenda item, other than the normal updates. And thank you, Shakia, for all your hard work on this, and we'll have a chance to introduce Shakia a little later on. That being said, let's jump into the rest of the agenda, starting with minutes. And there are two sets of minutes that we know we're required to approve. We'll do that at our meeting hopefully do that at our meeting on Monday. So we have no minutes to approve at the meeting today. I'm going to turn it over to the executive director for his weekly update, starting with staffing. And I know we have one new commission or team member to introduce. So, Mr. Executive Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, as always, we'll start with a quick staffing update. I'd like to introduce to the Commission as well as to the public Anne Marie Hall. Anne Marie joins the Commission as Executive Assistant. Will be supporting the Commissioners, and there she is, and myself in trying to manage a lot of the logistics of scheduling and pulling together really a lot of the functional and administrative tasks of getting the Commission organized. So we're very excited to have her, and looking forward to her contributions. Today is her second day, so we're already very excited to see what she's been contributing. She comes to us from the Senate, Senator Lovely's office, and is a graduate of Suffolk University, I think in 2016, so welcome, Anne Marie.
I have to ask, lawyer or non-lawyer?
She's a non-lawyer.
What's the total?
That brings the Commission to 24 staff.
And what's the ratio of lawyers to non-lawyers?
We're working on it. So the next item on the agenda is the usual update as far as license applications and statistics and data. So I believe you have on the slide here, there's 1,615 total applications currently that are active in the licensing portal. Of those, 144 are pending in at least one part. 86 have been withdrawn, and there are 1,084 that are incomplete. So therefore, 1,384, excuse me, that are incomplete and have not yet been submitted for the Commission's consideration. Those break down into the usual categories that you see in the table. There's 1 independent testing laboratory, 2 craft marijuana craft cooperatives, 35 cultivation, 31 establishment agents, 9 micro-business, 21 product manufacturer, 3 research facility, 38 retail, 1 transportation with an existing marijuana establishment license, and 3 third-party transportation. So that again breaks down into the 144 pending with at least 1 packet having been submitted to the Commission.
Any questions before we move to the next slide? Commissioner, right?
Is the independent testing lab that's currently pending the priority applicant?
It is not. Independent testing labs were not either. So the certification for priority status was for existing medical marijuana dispensaries and economic empowerment applicants.
So if other independent testing labs submitted today, where would they fall in the queue of what we have currently?
Well, so as you know, the Commission is taking applications in the order that they're received. So I guess not to spoil the next slide, but if there are hypothetically 61 applications that are pending with at least 4 packets having been submitted, this would be considered number 62 as the 19th general applicant.
So is it correct to say, or actually no, it's correct to say that a retail marijuana establishment couldn't open without an operational testing lab because all products are required to be tested prior to coming to market? And that's a statutory requirement that we're not able to waive as a commission. It has, it's written in stone.
That is correct. The requirement that all products, that all marijuana and marijuana products be tested by an independent testing lab is statutory and therefore would not be able to be waived by the Commission. Any other questions for me before we move on? So the next slide includes as indicated, there are 61 applications that have been submitted. All 4 packets have been submitted to the Commission, and they've been represented to be complete. As you will recall, the first step of our review process is to, in fact, determine their completeness. That breaks down to the following. There are 22 cultivation, 2 micro-business, 15 product manufacturer, 3 research facility, 18 retail, and 1 transportation with an existing marijuana establishment license. As mentioned, there are 40 that have existing R&D priority status, and 3 that have economic empowerment priority status, and 18 that are general applicants that would fall behind the priority status. I also want to indicate that I think on a previous slide, perhaps 2 weeks ago, there was a representation that it was 4 empowerment. That was actually a typo on my part. There have been 3, and there are 3 currently that are pending. And there's again the 40 R&D. Those 61 total applications represent 31 separate entities.
Questions on this?
So I'd like to raise that I have concerns about the supply chain in the absence of a functional testing lab. And so I would like for the Commission to consider that we allow the staff, give the staff discretion to take the completed applications for independent testing laboratories submitted on or before a date certain, and I guess I would say August 1st seems to be a rational date because it's a short enough time period. But we give them discretion to take those applications out of order for purposes of review to ensure that we have a complete supply chain.
So as many labs as applied for the date.
Right.
Just want to make sure I'm understanding.
And that it be purely for the purposes of being able to get the independent testing labs to the front of the cube so that we can start to establish a supply chain that is consistent with the mandate under the statute and consistent with our regulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Doyle, before we discuss the recommendation of Commissioner McBride, I just want to make sure you heard what Commissioner McBride suggested.
I did.
Okay, great.
And I would also say that I would obviously all the other review standards that we have in place for purposes of reviewing applications would remain in place with the SOE rating and review standards.
I appreciate that. There are comments on Commissioner McBride's suggestion? Commissioner Doyle? Any comments on Commissioner McBride's suggestion?
No, happy to have someone make the motion.
Yeah, I just want to, I will do that, ask for a motion in a second. I just want to say, I thank you for raising it. I think it's a really important issue. I think you proposed a very workable solution. So can I have a motion, please, to approve the recommendation of Commissioner McBride? Can I have a second, please? Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. Commissioner Doyle, your vote, please.
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. Let the record show that the Commissioner approved unanimously the recommendation of Commissioner McBride. And again, my thank you for raising it.
Can we just add, now that we've approved that motion, I just want to make sure that we're clear that the date is August 1st that we're asking for.
That's okay. I'm sorry. I should have been more explicit. That's what I voted on. Is that the understanding of everybody else, Commissioner Doyle, that the motion that we approved was all applications received prior to our August 1st? Is that what your,
Yes.
and that was your understanding, Commissioner Flanagan? Commissioner Title?
Yes.
So, thank you very much again for raising that. I really appreciate that.
It's just, so I'm clear, so it's August 1st, I guess the interpretation will be midnight as of August 1st.
Eastern Standard Time.
Eastern Standard
Eastern
Time.
Daylight Time, excuse me.
It is a staff discretion to prioritize those applications, and then, of course, all other review standards will remain.
Correct. Thank you. Any other comments on this slide, Mr. Executive Director?
I have none at this time.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a state of Massachusetts slide.
So there is the existing applications broken down by county, largely the same as last week. I will just identify the changes. There is an additional application in Berkshire County, so from 2 to 3, and there are 2 additional applications in Norfolk County from 5 to 7, thus representing the 61 that are pending with all 4 packets having been submitted.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Is there anything else in your weekly report, Mr. Executive Director?
There is not. I guess we'll also undertake some efforts to make sure that the decision of the commission today to prioritize independent testing labs is communicated to the public as well. I'm sure our friends that are here will help us with that, but we'll make sure that materials are available on our website. We can put it on social media, and then if there's any other conversations, that we'll make sure that that's communicated to folks with that August 1st submission timeframe.
I have, something that we can probably put out as we were talking that I think probably condenses it, so.
Thank you very much. Okay, anything else, Mr. Executive Director?
Not related to license applications, though.
Anything else in your report? Okay, thank you. Okay, there's just one remaining agenda item, which is the social equity program update, and then the review of the RFP. I think comments I made at the beginning of the meeting stand. This is an incredibly important part of our mandate, and I'm really grateful to the hard work of Shakia, certainly Commissioner Title, but the entire staff and commission on this. Hopefully, you'll see how seriously we take this and how committed we are to deliver on the legislative mandates here. So, that being said, I just want to move this over because Commissioner Doyle was having a hard time hearing, so we can move this over to you, Shakia. Mr. Executive Director, is there anything you want to say in introduction before we turn it over to you, Shakia?
There is. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to reintroduce the commission formally to Shakia Scott, our Director of Community Outreach, who is prepared to present on really what I think is a collective commission vision for the social equity program, which stems from, of course, the regulatory process that has unfolded. There's a statutory theme and mandate as well. that this program be developed and developed, I think, in earnest, which has been going on for some time. Shakia has been with us for about a month, and I think what you'll see from her presentation is that she has put a tremendous amount of thought while since having gotten to the commission, but also beforehand. I think, as you indicated, Mr. Chairman, leveraged the...
Excuse me, apparently we've lost the connection with Commissioner Doyle, so could you just pause for a second, please? Sure. What happened? Was it our end or her end?
It's moving this.
Oh.
It's your fault, Mr. Chairman.
As is everything else in life, it is my fault.
You're comfortable with that.
I am, well, I've been married for 4 years, of course I'm comfortable.
Okay, it'll just take a second for it to back up. Sorry, guys.
Should we take this time to talk with you?
We don't have that time. The phone's just rebooting, sorry.
That was, as stated by Commissioner Pine, it was my fault, so, sorry.
Do we want to just call them the phone for now? Hi, Commissioner Doyle. Hi, it's Erica. We're going to put you on speakerphone from the cell phone because the speaker got, the conference line got lost. Ready to roll? 1 second. Okay.
Hey, would you ask her to say something? So make sure they can hear her?
Commissioner Doyle? She's here.
Okay. Okay, okay, great. I'm sorry, Mr. Executive Director, please resume.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was indicating, the program and the vision that Shakia will bring to the commission today is a product of a lot of thought and diligence on her part, as well as on the commission's. It's really leveraging the commission's vision that is embedded in regulation as well as in the underlying statute. And again, she's been with the commission for a short period of time. I think what you'll see during the course of her presentation is that she was thinking about this program before she even started with the commission. Has really brought that to bear internally, and I think there's a real comprehensive approach to how best to implement this. So I'm very proud to have her as part of our team, and I think based on what you'll see today, you'll share that sentiment as she really unveils what I think is a very powerful and meaningful vision for a pretty comprehensive social equity program. So with that, I'd like to reintroduce the commission to Shakia Scott and give her the floor.
So, good morning all. Thank you for that great introduction, Director Collins, Chairman Hoffman, and Commissioners Title, McBride, Doyle, and Flanagan, for allowing me to not only implement and develop this program, but to pioneer this program, as I am honored to say is the first of its kind at the state level and nationwide. So today, as you can see up on the screen, I will take you through a very brief background on what equity is and why we need equity programs. I will also cover an overview of the state law and legislative mandates as they pertain to equity programs. And then I will give you an overview into our program, the application to qualify for the program, and then cover next immediate steps or implementation steps, including collaborations and participation we are hoping to gain. So what is equity? It is important for one to first understand that equity is not equality. As you can see, equality is sameness and equity is fairness. Secondly, equity is not giving persons who are considered less fortunate than others more resources or more access just for the sake of perceived shortcomings. However, equity is a means to address and further prevent the inequitable status quo by first recognizing and then accommodating those who experience disparities in treatment and have been fairly untargeted by institutionalized bias, prejudice, racism, through our government systems. That includes our criminal justice systems, our educational systems, or just in our daily lives. Equity is also a means to redress the historic and long-lasting harm done to those specific individuals and communities, but only specifically because they have received those disparities in treatment. So why do we need equity programs, and why is equity in the cannabis industry, why does equity in the cannabis industry matter? It matters because if you take a look at the image here, the image that says war on drugs, we can see that 8 million people nationwide or nationally were affected or arrested just for marijuana or cannabis. Meaning 8 million people and counting currently still suffer from incarceration, stigma, lack of access to employment following arrest, and other collateral damage to their family and children as a result of incarceration. Moreover, as Darlene Flynn, director of Oakland, California's Department of Race and Equity, points out, the war on drugs was or is a very specific war on a very specific community and culture. This affected mostly those of Black and African American and or Latino and or Hispanic descent. So on this next slide, we can see that quote visualized. We can clearly see the undeniable arrest disparities in Massachusetts specifically, and then nationwide overall in our system of incarceration. And we focused on the disparities for those who identify as Black and or Latino because these have been the most pronounced. I want to note that in the images you see here, they reflect little to no difference in the use, possession, or distribution and sales patterns between Blacks and whites or Latinos and whites. Sorry. These disparities you see here continued even after significant reductions in arrests due to decriminalization and legalization measures. However, even though there were these significant decreases in arrests, the racial disparities persisted or became worse, as we've consistently seen in other states. These disparities also lead to a lack of representation by those most impacted by cannabis enforcement in the cannabis industry, as you can see on the slide. It also points out the key barriers to entry into this industry, and this is specifically what our program looks to address, giving us the opportunity to change the script. So not only is the Commission committed to implementing programs to address these disparities, we are required by state law to promote and encourage full participation by people from communities that have been disproportionately harmed by prohibition and enforcement, and prioritize review and licensing decisions for businesses that promote economic empowerment in those communities. Last year, the Commission began identifying areas of disproportionate impact based on the impact of drug and cannabis arrests within the largest cities of Massachusetts. A study by John Getman, PhD, Associate Professor in Criminal Justice at Shenandoah University. Here is a map displaying what areas are included. This is 29 cities and towns in certain parts of Boston, Worcester, Springfield, and Lowell. And you can find guidance on the Commission's website to help you identify which specific areas in Boston, Worcester, Springfield, and Lowell are part of those disproportionate areas. So as this data changes, these areas will be revisited and reevaluated. In addition to these areas, those whose participation is encouraged under state law and regulations include people of color, specifically of African American or Black and Hispanic or Latino descent. It includes women, farmers, and veterans as well. And those groups were not evaluated solely based on arrest rates. If the Commission fails to provide opportunities for meaningful participation for disproportionately impacted communities, we are required under state law to hold ourselves accountable and take remedial measures, as you heard described earlier. I would like to note that the Commission is preemptively acting on these measures and expanding the scope. If meeting participation is still not achieved, it will be up to the Commission to examine the barriers to entry demonstrated by the evidence and take appropriate action. As an additional layer of accountability, the Commission has appointed the 9-member Citizens Review Committee made up of citizens from disproportionately impacted communities to advise us on this program as it moves forward. The Citizens Review Committee will be convening for its first time on July 10th at 10 a.m. and the meeting space is to be announced. And so now that we have established a background of what and why, let's dig into the program. The Social Equity Program is designed to create sustainable pathways into the adult use cannabis industry for both individuals and businesses, regardless of their desired specialty. This program will allow applicants to reimagine what they can contribute while also providing avenues to build and support the growth of a robust adult use industry. The program will create these pathways by pairing accepted applicants with qualified vendors based on a track system. These tracks are based on an applicant's specific interest in the cannabis industry, their current skills, and the outcomes they are seeking to gain from the program. The program will also create a dedicated connector for social equity applicants who are job seekers and prospective or current employers for employment opportunities specifically in the cannabis industry. So, to give you a little background, or a little insight over the past month, my first month of employment with the Commission, thanks for having me. I have dedicated each day to the conceptualization, development, and implementation of this program. That includes expanding the program vision and creation of the track system, drafting, designing, and developing the application to qualify for the program, drafting and designing the RFQ and procurement process, creating and designing a dedicated web space as well as the web space's utilization plan, development and maintenance of dedicated program lists, conceptualization of the portal and build out, as well as the strategic implementation and outreach plans for the program. Of course, I must thank all of my coworkers for their collaboration and continued support on a number of these items. So continuing on, to be eligible for the program, applicants or licensees must demonstrate at least one of the following, as you can see listed there. They must have resided in the area of disproportionate impact for at least 5 of the last or past 10 years, and their income must not exceed 400% of the federal poverty level. They must have a past drug conviction and have been a resident of Massachusetts for at least the preceding 12 months, or they must be married to or the child of a person with a drug conviction and have been a resident of Massachusetts for at least the past preceding months, 12 months. Also, based on the reevaluation of the areas of disproportionate impact, eligibility for the program and eligibility criteria will be revisited over time. Now, moving on to our track system, there are 4 tracks an applicant can fit into based on their specified needs and position in the industry they are looking to fill. Our first track is the entrepreneur track, and this track focuses on those seeking licensure and ownership of marijuana businesses. Topics covered will include, but are not limited to, navigation of the application, licensure, and certification processes, and training on common industry challenges. Our track 2 is our core track. The core track is focused on those interested in cannabis careers at registered marijuana establishments at the managerial and executive level. Topics covered, will include, but are not limited to, management and executive level workforce development training and common industry challenges. This track is subdivided into core professionals, which have 7+ years of experience, and core experienced candidates who possess 2 to 6 years of experience. Our third track is our re-entry and entry-level track, which is focused on those re-entering society or recovering or coming back into society from being incarcerated, and those who have little to no experience which is 0 to 2 years of experience, requiring introductory level skills. Topics covered will include basic skills-based trainings and business development. Our fourth and final track is our ancillary track, and it provides training for those with existing skills that are directly transferable to working with or supporting cannabis businesses. Topics covered will focus on skills commonly used in the industry, such as software development, customer service, security, and other practical transferable skills directly focused on working with legal adult use cannabis. The track is subdivided into ancillary professionals. Those are people with professional skills such as law, accounting, and technology skills. And trade professionals, those with trade skills or occupations that require a specific set of skills, such as drivers, plumbers, HVAC experts, electricians, mechanics, and carpenters. This track is also designed for those seeking to be inventors or developers of new cannabis accessories and tools. So here we see the goals of the program, and the overall goal of the social equity program is to decrease the disparities in life incomes for these specific individuals and improve the quality of life in areas of disproportionate impact by first, reducing barriers to entry in the commercial adult use cannabis industry, provide professional and technical services and mentoring for individuals and businesses facing systemic barriers, and promoting sustainable, socially and economically reparative practices in the commercial marijuana industry in Massachusetts. The benefits of the program will include, but are not in any way limited to, what you see here. There will be ongoing technical assistance. There will be fee waivers and initial exclusive access to certain types of licenses for these equity applicants. Here we can see an application overview. To apply for the social equity program, you will be able to access the application on the Commission's dedicated web space, which is, and you'll see it at the end, www.masscannabiscommission.com/social equity programs. It is not available yet, but you can stay updated there or feel free to contact me directly. However, the application will be digital and accessible, and it will be a 9-step process, as you can see on the slide. I do want to point out that for qualification 1, 2, and 3, steps 6, 7, and 8, an applicant will have to provide documentation, upload documentation, or provide it directly to the Commission to prove the qualification status. On this slide, I also have to thank Dr. Julie Johnson for her collaboration. She's our Director of Research. She's helping us to make sure that we are collecting data on communities represented through both our applications and our programs. To make sure that the program is living up to its purpose and is aligned with its goals, the Commission will track and measure the overall increases in participation in the industry during and after completion of our program, particularly for individuals residing in impacted areas, women, veterans, farmers, and people of color, specifically those of African American or Black and Hispanic and or Latino descent, individuals with drug-related convictions, and economic empowerment applicants, as well as certified economic empowerment recipients. We will also measure and track the increases in workforce training programs for entry into cannabis industry that our program creates. We will also track and monitor increases in businesses and individuals entered into and successfully paired with employers through our dedicated connector. And we will also track and monitor the number of licenses granted through this program. So the next steps for the program, the first implementation action and the immediate next step, the Commission will seek vendors to develop face-to-face and on-demand curriculum, as well as provide professional training, technical services, and mentoring to individuals and businesses seeking assistance with entry into the marijuana industry through the social equity program. The Commission hopes to release an RFQ via its website this week, the week of June 25th. And so that will be what the commissioners will vote on today, and that will roll out as soon as we can get a vote. I do want to say that if you are looking for more information on the program, or regarding participation in the program, please feel free to contact me directly, and my contact information is up on the slide. Or please visit masscannabiscontrol.com/social equity programs, as you can see there. Also, for those interested, I can add you to our dedicated list so that you may be alerted when the RFQ becomes available and or our application becomes available. I want to take a moment here to thank Commissioner Title for all of her work to push inclusion of such requirements into our regulations, as well as her dedication to equity and collaboration on the program's vision. And again, I would like to thank all of my other co-workers at the Commission for their continued support and collaboration.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a great presentation and an amazing amount of work in a very short tenure. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Are there questions or comments? Shakia?
Thank you, Shakia, for that presentation. Certainly very ambitious program, and it should be. And I have a lot of faith in you and this whole agency, especially based on
Thank you.
That was the last public display. Well, you deserve it. So I'm going to let that one slide.
On that note, you've done an incredible amount of work in 1 month. So thank you for that. So I have 3 questions. The first is just a clarification of the website. So it's masscannabiscontrol.com/social-equity-programs for the live stream.
I don't believe you have to write the hyphens, but can we check in with our
That is
digital
correct.
director?
That is correct. That is the correct URL. So if you guys go to that URL, then you'll find the social equity page. Yeah.
My second question is, could you talk about the outreach efforts to make sure the intended communities are aware of the program?
Sure. So that will begin in the 29 cities that were identified as disproportionately impacted areas. We would be hosting and collaborating with community partners, advocates, and activists, as well as civic associations to host events in cities and towns across the state. We are building lists of outreach, especially to those that applied through the Economic Empowerment Program, as well as those that received certification as Economic Empowerment Priority Status recipients, to make sure that they are looped in, and if they need help along the way or resources, that they have a dedicated person to outreach to or connect to receive those resources or enter the program. But those are our very next steps to kind of go on our own type of roadshow around the state and speak to people and see where they are and meet them where they are and encourage them to, if they want to be a part of this industry, either find avenues through this program or find avenues that we can help them to achieve their goal.
And then my last question, can you talk about the funding for the program?
Sure. So the Commission's budget includes $300,000 for the equity program and community outreach for this year. However, for future years, it depends on how the budget is appropriated. The state law specifies that after administrative costs, one of the 5 areas of which marijuana revenue can be spent or expended is for programming for restorative justice. Under the state law, that includes equity programs, workforce development, and industry-specific technical assistance, like we're doing, and specifically for people in disproportionately impacted areas.
Other questions?
Sure. I have a couple of questions. Thank you very much for your presentation. I know that it's certainly an issue that is important to the people of Massachusetts. I just had a couple of questions about the defined disparities slide. When we talk about the pie charts about the racial disparities in the incarceration system, is that just for marijuana convictions or is that for all drug crimes?
The second one, where, like you said, racial disparities in the system of incarceration, that's for all drug crimes.
Okay, so that's including everything in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
The other question I have is when you talk about going out to the 29 disproportionately impacted communities, which is going to be your priority, what is the goal? I mean, I know the goal is for them to participate in the program, but are we talking employment or are we talking ownership? And then how do you determine which communities outside the 29 communities you're going to target after that. Because having been through the Doyle Road show that we just did, it's a large area. I mean, we have a relatively small state, but it's a large area to cover. And I think if we're trying to be very inclusive, my hope is that there's a plan to include, whether it be regionally or however you can come about that.
So I think that the goal of the outreach is one, to gauge where people are and to meet them where they are, whether that's if they want to be owners, if they want to be licensed, if they want to just participate in the industry or know more, that we're showing up with resources and education and keeping them in the loop and not feeling separated. What goes along with that is building trust and having people say, oh, this is a state agency, but I can trust them to get me into the industry without thinking that they're setting me up in a sense, or just to build that trust and to be present in those areas so people feel connected and they can come to us at any point and say, I would like to be a part of this industry. What do I do? Where do I go? And their first outlook or outreach is to us, and not confusion. I think that's part of the goal. Part of the goal as well is to get people's interest into this program and to let them know that it's here and that it's not specific to licensing, because that's not what everyone wants to do, and everyone can't be an owner. We have to think bigger about building out the full workforce and about building out the full industry. And to speak on the point about the other cities that are not included on that list, I do know that per the study by John Getman, he identified more than 29. And so I think that my first step to outreach those other cities and towns is to follow that lead. So after the 29, go to 30, then 31, then 32 on his list that he identified, because those are increasingly or included in those areas of disproportionate impact. They're just not the most. And then just to put it out there now that this is not a program or a commission that is going to exclude anyone. So just because the program isn't tailored to you doesn't mean the industry isn't for you.
Other questions? Commissioner McBride?
I have a question that might be better saved for when we talk about the RMQ, so if it is when we can certainly handle it.
Okay.
So when we're talking about the program, are we conceptualizing it as one-on-one assistance? Are we conceptualizing it as sort of like training, programming? I mean, I guess what's kind of the general concept for what folks who are involved in the program can kind of expect if they become part of the program?
So I think we could look at that from two ways. If you are going to be a vendor, I think it's specific to what you do. I don't want I shouldn't say I don't want, but I wouldn't want a vendor to think that they have to change their whole teaching style or curriculum to be a part of the program. So even through our application on the other end of that, we made it a choice for the applicant. We want the applicant to specify what their needs are so that we can meet them where they are, and we're not making this one-size-fits-all program, which we know usually doesn't fit all. That leaves a lot of people out. So the applicant will, through the application, specify what they're looking for. I'm looking for workshops. I'm looking for one-on-one consultations. I'm looking for seminars. I'm looking for big conferences. I'm looking for, digital resources like YouTube videos and just language or books I can read. And then finding those vendors that already suit those needs, as opposed to saying, we want everyone to come into this program and design a one-on-one or design a seminar. We want to meet you where you are. And that's how you make it as inclusive as possible, because you're not putting all these standards on the vendor or the applicant to say you can only come at this time and it's just going to be this specific learning that you're going to receive.
So for instance, one of the things that there are a lot of aspects of this program that I don't have experience with, but one of the things I do have experience with that you and I actually talked about is on the doing continuing legal education with the social law library in Springfield, and then down the side at UMass Dartmouth and here in Boston. One of the pieces that I was talking to the attorneys that attended that program about was being involved in this program and finding a way to involve yourself if you have a skill to bring, a legal skill to bring, whether it's negotiating contracts or understanding cannabis law and helping folks navigate that this is a really good opportunity for folks who are participating on the social equity side of it, but also for people who maybe are looking for a way to become involved in this way. And so I guess I have a real interest in making sure that to me is obviously a one-on-one sort of piece. And I would be really interested as we move forward, including a piece of that in this programming, and whether it's through this RFP process or whether it's through working with organizations like the Boston Bar Association, Mass Bar Association, Women's Bar Association, sort of these affinity organizations, to try to figure out a way to make those connections, because I think that it can really be beneficial for people on both sides of that to have that interest level and to have that expertise sort of brought to bear. So I really am thrilled to see this coming together the way that it is, and I think that there are a lot of opportunities to build on this as well, and I hope that we can kind of take advantage of those relationships and those organizations to kind of push this forward also.
Thank you.
So,
Commissioner Flanagan?
sorry, one last thing, only because I just think that we need to be really strategic about this, is that when we're going out into the communities, I really would like to manage the expectations of people, given the sense that from my experience in government, until something affects a family or affects someone, they're really not paying attention. So while we're here every week and everyone in this room is paying attention to us, that's not to be said for the same out west. And so I'm hoping that in our education programs or education manuals or pamphlets or whatever you're going to create, that we explicitly explain people that can participate in this program, because I know that some of the groups that I've talked to, people feel as though if there's any conviction that they can participate in this program. And we know that in our regulations, there's a large chart, thanks to Commissioner McBride, that we have in the back saying things that exclude you. But I really would like to be very specific for the people that are able to participate, but that all those that aren't. Only because I don't want to get the hopes up of people that everyone's going to be able to be eligible and then have them fall short of that. So I'm hoping that when we start to go out there, and it's going to be you, so so this is kind of your job, that we really do manage the expectations. And I realize that some people are disappointed by that, but I think as a commission, we have a responsibility to the citizens of the Commonwealth, and I think first and foremost, that's our focus.
Yes.
And then everything else comes secondary. So if we can work on that, and I'd be happy to work on that with you, but I really think it's important to just explicitly say and manage those expectations before we get out there.
So since could you ask Commissioner Doyle if she has any comments or questions?
Commissioner Doyle, you all set? You have something to say?
I am. I had questions, but they got answered in the course of the presentation and discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Again, thank you very, very much for both working this great presentation. I think it's time to review the RFQ. So if the executive director could walk us through the RFQ and what you're requesting from the commission today, I'd appreciate that.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my thanks to Shakia as well. As I indicated in introducing her this morning, I mentioned that she's been with the commission for about a month, but as you can see from her presentation, I think she inherited a really good vision and plan, and then really picked that up and ran with it to today's presentation. So related to that, of course, we have some other items that she mentioned that are kind of tangible and are related to a rollout of this program, which includes the launch of the commission's application, which will be another element of our cannabis industry portal, Mass CIP, which we're working on making sure that when we roll that out, it is as seamless as other launches that we've had through that platform. We also have the RFQ, which is before you, and of course course, as Shakia mentioned, the rollout of a website, which is where a lot of these items will exist, kind of in perpetuity, but our plan is to have that be a real living page that has periodic updates and kind of tracks the progress of the program. So the item before you now for your consideration is the request for qualifications, and our intention here is to, as Shakia mentioned, have kind of a repository of vendors that we can work with. I wanted to Commissioner McBride's point identify that this is not a kind of an end-all be-all for the program. It's really meant to be a component of the program. There are also going to be plenty of opportunities for that one-to-one connection to make with certain, let it be accountants or attorneys that want to participate in this program and partner with the commission. There's also, I think, an opportunity for the commission itself to develop some programming and manage kind of courses or workshops or large presentations. And of course, I think there's also an attempt, as we do with most things, to be very digital forward and have materials reside on that webpage as well for folks that may not be program participants, but it's a way to have some of those presentations kind of live and be available for folks that either can't access the programs as they roll out or perhaps want a refresher at some point too. So the RFQ is really intended to identify any number of vendors that will participate in this program. The rationale for doing an RFQ versus an RFP is we're looking to develop a list of qualified vendors that we can work with as a way to be inclusive and as a way to maximize our own efficiency based on skill set, based on region, based on experience, and really partnering those applicants that come through the door with vendors that are able to satisfy their needs. So this is typical from a formatting standpoint of previous procurements, but it is different in what the end result or objective is of the procurement, which is to identify a list of qualified vendors as opposed to identify one singular vendor to work with the commission. As you know, when we did the seed to sale tracking and licensing procurement, we identified a single vendor to work with on both of those functions. This is really intended to identify a list of folks and then issue what I would describe as kind of mini procurements from that to say we're looking for this specific service and go to that list of qualified vendors that we can then choose to work with. It also allows us to make sure that more folks are able to be part of this program and allow for Shakia, as she rolls out, to again identify those partnerships and really match expertise with services being sought. So again, from a formatting standpoint, it should look familiar to the commission. As Shakia indicated during her presentation, our hope is to, if the commission is so inclined, to approve the release of this procurement to really have an accelerated time frame. If we map it out, if the RFQ were to be issued as early as tomorrow and posted to ComBuys, the state's procurement website, as well as to our own website, the number of steps would put us in a position to potentially have an approved provider list by mid-August. Again, that's accelerated, but it's, I think, also mindful of the fact that there's a lot of steps that need to transpire in order for that to be accomplished. So happy to take any questions you might have. Also, if the commission is inclined to approve it, we would ask that there be some, I guess, permissive language included in any motion that allows us to really dress it up and prepare it for publication, but substantively nothing would change aside from pure formatting.
Thank you. There are questions or comments for the executive director? Commissioner Tyler?
So the first question is, you said for the date, we would hopefully have an approved vendor list by August. So what's the date range approximately when you would expect it to be open for people to submit applications?
Sure. So I guess, again, using the time frame of if it were to be posted for tomorrow, responses would be due to the commission by and around July 25th, toward the end of July. Of course, I think we're trying to be mindful of the fact that there's a holiday coming up and folks will need to obviously enjoy that, but also be able to get questions.
No, he wasn't referring to us.
It was worth a shot. Also, so in the procurement process, historically, what we've done is provided an opportunity for vendors to ask us questions. Wanted to make sure that we're mindful of those questions and able to be responsive to them. Post those questions, they can then respond or react to those responses in order to fulfill any proposal they want to submit. So making all of that into the time frame, if the RFQ were to be issued as early as tomorrow, responses would be due to the commission on the 25th, with then our plan being that we would evaluate them as quickly as possible. So the next steps are really driven by the commission's work and one, workload, but also how, I guess, in-depth we want to go with our review process. It could be that we invite folks in for presentations. That's really discretionary from the commission standpoint. So what happens after the 25th is really the commission's prerogative. So think trying to set realistic expectations, it could be by mid-August, but responses would be due to the commission by, right now, at least as of the 25th.
And then, this may just be, it depends, but I had a question about the digital content.
Sure.
So if a vendor creates, say, a YouTube video that trains on a particular topic, would we then own it, or them, or both?
I would say it depends, although I think our intention is if the commission's going to be providing compensation for that video, that we would own that content. That would be our expectation, but of course, anything is subject to negotiation, and we would engage in that process, but I guess as a kind of fundamental approach, the commission and thereby the Commonwealth is paying for any content, that would be our expectation that we would own.
Do you anticipate that maybe we could use those videos for other purposes, or perhaps make them public, or another way?
I think that would be our intention, that would be our plan. I think first is to serve the folks that are participants in the social equity program, but then if there's any utility beyond that, I think that's something we would have to consider.
Great. The responsible vendor program, could somebody apply for this and then also qualify to be a responsible vendor program trainer?
They certainly could. I think this is they're different, of course, as you know, but I think there's definitely, responsible vendor program is really intended for licensees and their agents, whereas this is for perhaps a broader audience that could include, as Shakia mentioned, those kind of ancillary professions as well. But there's certainly nothing that would preclude someone from participating in the responsible vendor program, but those programs are different, so it would be kind of a case-by-case basis.
And then last question, I can picture a situation, and I think my former company would be one of them, where you would qualify, but then you would see this document and just be intimidated and not do it. Is there a way we could put out like a video or a summary or something that just walks you through if you've never applied to work with the state before, what it's like?
We can certainly try. That's, I think, actually a great idea. The procurement, as you will see, is also, it takes a dual track, really, which is, I think, intentional on the commission's part, which is that we will post it to Combis, which is kind of the traditional procurement site for all Commonwealth procurements. We'll also post it to our website, which is, I think, is again intentional that as folks check our website, it may not be familiar with the other procurement functions throughout the Commonwealth. They will have this material available to them. We do also allow for submissions to be sent directly to the commission, not so much avoiding the Combis, but having that dual approach. They can also submit electronically to the commission. So I think we're trying to be mindful of the fact that there's going to be folks that want to participate in this procurement but may not have an account set up through Combis. So I think any opportunity we have to make this procurement accessible and available to folks, but also I think digestible for folks, I think we would certainly try to do that. I think that's a great idea. We should pursue it.
Any other questions? Commissioner Bright?
I have a question that might fall into the category of wordsmithing on the RFQ, but this may also be, it may just also be a clarification. So there's a piece in here that says to contract with the commission, providers must demonstrate reputation for providing services in a manner that is professional, unbiased, and independent. Positive references must be available from private and public sector clients for the specific services solicited. I can envision someone who might want to participate in this program that maybe doesn't necessarily have a public sector client experience. So I guess I would ask if there's a reason why we have to keep it as and, or if we could change it to an and, or just to sort of allow for some diversity of experiences for vendors who might want to participate.
That's totally fine, we can change that so that it's more.
Is there an issue there? You're not affected. I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, very good.
Other questions or comments? Can you ask Commissioner Doyle again, please?
Mr. Doyle, do you have any questions or comments?
I do not, thank you.
Then I'd like to ask for a motion to approve the recommendation that the Commission allows this RFQ to be released subject to editing, graphical improvement, and the modification of language as just suggested by Commissioner McBride. Can I have a motion, please? Can I have a second?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. Commissioner Doyle, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Sorry for that bob and weave. Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman, aye. Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the release of this RFQ, subject to the modifications I just articulated. Thank you very much. There being no further business in front of the commission, I would like to put the notification of our next meeting up, or announce our next meeting, and then ask for a motion to adjourn. So as I mentioned, we will be meeting on Monday, July 2nd, 10:30 a.m. In this conference room. Again, my thanks to the Massachusetts Health Policy Commission. It is, I think we settled on the language, Mr. Executive Director. It is our hope and expectation that we will have some license applications to review at that point in time. But you will know for sure, because by law we will post the agenda by Thursday morning prior to 10:30. Can I ask at this point then for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
May I have a second? Let the record show that Commissioner Flanagan made a motion to adjourn. I still think we have to do a voice vote. Commissioner Title made the second. Commissioner Doyle, your vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Flanagan?
Aye.
Commissioner Title?
Aye.
Commissioner McBride?
Aye.
Commissioner Hoffman? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. It's been 2 weeks, so hopefully I remember how to get these meetings started. First of all, recognize a quorum. I am calling this meeting of the Cannabis Control Commission to order at 1:05 p.m. on July 26th, 2018. Can everybody in the back hear me? Great. Can I ask, is this meeting being recorded? Thank you. Let me put the public on notice this meeting is being recorded. Can I ask everybody to please put their cell phones on silent or shut them off altogether? Thank you. Since it has been 2 weeks since our last meeting, we have actually a pretty packed agenda, so I'm going to keep my comments brief and just describe what we're going to cover today in the agenda. We have one set of meeting minutes to review and approve. We have the standard executive director report. We have one new employee, if I'm correct, to introduce, and then we'll have our standard slides to update the status of license applications. We have, before we get into the review of staff recommendations on licenses, we have several commission discussions, some of which we'll vote on, some of which we'll just discuss. But we, as we have mentioned in the past, have, with the leadership of Commissioner McBride, been developing guidance with respect to host community agreements. There has been some confusion on both sides in terms of guidelines there, and so we have developed some guidance that Commissioner McBride, as I said, has taken leadership on. We'll discuss that. We, in reviewing and discussing previous license applications, have given some pushback to some of the applicants about the specificity of their positive impact plan, and we agreed that we would give guidance on that. And with the leadership of Commissioner Title, we do have a document to review about guidance for positive impact plans. We also have, again, with leadership of Commissioner Title, some guidance with respect to municipalities and equity issues, and so we'll talk about that. Commissioner Doyle has provided leadership on our agricultural issues, including that we have a mandated report to the legislature on farmers and businesses of all sizes, and so we're going to review that. We also, at the request of Commissioner Title, if you recall, in a previous meeting, there was a request by Commissioner Title to put the issue of economic empowerment applications on the table. We have a survey to the 300 plus people that applied for priority certification, economic empowerment priority certification, that we sent out on Friday. We have 60 plus responses from that survey. I was trained as a statistician, so it is my responsibility to say that we still need some more data before we can draw definitive conclusions, but we thought we'd at least share some high-level data from that as part of our conversation about economic empowerment applications. And at a subsequent meeting, hopefully we'll get a greater number of responses, and we'll have much more refined statistical analysis that we can perform on the issue. But it's an important issue that we want to get on the table, and we'll share at a high level the data that we've gotten back thus far. And we have talked before, the final discussion item for the commission is we've talked before about suitability committee, that the suitability review committee that would be required in those instances where our background checks came back with issues that required discussion and recommendation. And the executive director is going to make a recommendation, or request, excuse me, that we delegate the responsibility for organizing that committee to, and we'll discuss and vote on that. That's it for the topics, although there's 7 topics there, so, or 6, excuse me, and each of them can take quite a while, so this might be a lengthy meeting. Once we're through that, we have 7 completed license applications that the staff has done their analysis on and review on, that we've gotten background check information completed, and we have heard back from the relevant community that their requirements have been met, and so the staff will make a recommendation on each of these 7 license applications. That's it. It's going to be a pretty packed meeting, so I said I'll keep my remarks short, and let's just get into the topics. And the first order of business being approval of minutes from previous meeting, July 12th, 2018. Can I ask if everyone on the commission has had a chance to review these minutes? Are there any comments or suggested edits? And can I have a motion to approve the minutes from July 12th?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor? Thank you. These minutes have been approved, and thanks to the team that has pulled together. That is the last meeting that we had, so I think we are completely caught up with respect to minutes. Thank you. Before we get into the license summary, Mr. Executive Director, can you give us your staffing report, please?
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. There's a few staffing updates I'd like to share with the commission. First, is the introduction of a new team member, that is Pauline Wynn. Pauline joins us as Associate General Counsel on General Counsel Christine Bailey's team. She comes to us most recently from the State Ethics Commission, where she was a Senior Assistant General Counsel, and for a time served as the Acting General Counsel. Has previously worked at the Division of Professional Licensure in the Office of Legal Counsel as a contract attorney. She's a graduate of BC Law and Harvard University, and again joins the commission as our new Associate General Counsel. We're very excited to have her. Already she's hit the ground running in the week or so that she's been here. So.
I guess we're all out of practice, including yourself, but what's the lawyer versus non-lawyer count now?
We continue to sufficiently dominate the ranks. Also related to staffing is another attorney joining the team. This is the position of enforcement counsel, is open and posted on the commission's mass careers page as well as on our website. That is open through July 30th, and yet again, that would be an attorney joining our team.
Great. Anything else on the staffing front?
We are actively interviewing for a number of positions, and as you know, we previously posted our investigator position. We had many hundreds of applications for that role, and we are beginning the interview process for that, as well as for HR generalist. So many employment related items in the works and in various stages, but confident that in the next few meetings we'll have periodic updates on new hires as well as where we stand in that interview process.
Great, thank you. Anything else on the staffing front, or should we move into the licensing statistics?
Move into the statistics. So this is the broader kind of totals capture of information from our licensing system, which is there are 2,089 applications in total. Those break down into 177 pending with at least one part of an application, one packet having been submitted. 107 have been withdrawn, 1,800 are incomplete, and of course the commission has to date issued 5 provisional licenses. Those break down into the table that you see there, which is 2 craft cooperative, 3 independent testing lab, 1 laboratory agent, 42 cultivation, 36 establishment agent, 9 microbusiness, 26 product manufacturer, 3 research facility, 49 retail, 2 transportation with an existing establishment license, and finally 4 third-party transportation. That's the grand total of 177.
Thank you.
That item, those 177 break down to the next slide would be 85 total pending applications with all 4 packets having been submitted. Those break down into the following, which is 1 independent testing lab, 30 cultivation, 3 microbusiness, 20 product manufacturer, 3 research facility, 26 retail, and 2 transportation with an existing establishment license. And as you see on the right-hand side, the plus is the differentiation from the previous meeting. So that includes 1 additional independent testing lab, 5 cultivation. That's, so again, total being 12 new applications or 4 packets having been submitted since the last meeting. That's 57 R&D priorities, 3 empowerment, and 25 general applicants. Those 85 applications represent 45 separate entities.
Thank you.
So this slide was new as of our last meeting, and this is a continuation of that, which is, of those 85, where are they in our process? There are 35 that have been submitted and are awaiting staff review for first completeness. That includes, of course, those 12 applications that within the past 2 weeks have been, all 4 packets having been submitted. There are 18 that have been identified as having submitted insufficient information for us to review and therefore incomplete. There are 20 that are out for a third party. That includes the municipal notice to the city or town in which the entity intends to be located, as well as a third party background check. There are 7 that are before you today for consideration that are, of course, waiting for your evaluation, and then, of course, the 5 that have been previously before the commission for provisional license. And lastly is where those applications sit across Massachusetts based on a county breakdown. I think just for the Commission's edification here, there are 3 additional applications from Berkshire County, 6 from Worcester County, and 3 from Plymouth County that make up the 12 that are due as the last map. Correct.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Okay. Thank you. The update.
That is all that I have at this time.
That's all you have for your report. Okay, so let's move into the discussion topics in front of the commission, and we'll start, if it's okay, with host community agreement guidance. So, Commissioner McBride. Again, my thanks to Commissioner McBride for her leadership in developing this for consideration by the commission.
So we're introducing the guidance on host community agreements, and my suggestion is we introduce this today, and that then we consider putting it out for a short 2-week comment period, so that members of the general public can weigh in on the sufficiency of the guidance and any feedback that they might want to provide. So the guidance on host community agreements was drafted to set the table for negotiations and to set bumpers for what might be included in a host community agreement. We are thankfully guided by ample decisional law, which is court cases, on the matter of fees, and we also have obviously the plain language of the statute, which is 94G, section 3A. Happily, much of the case law is pretty recent in vintage, so we have some pretty good guideposts to help us. Now, generally speaking, when we talk about money that falls under the Chapter 55, the Acts of 2017, we are really talking about 2 categories of money when we talk about the relationship between marijuana establishments and municipalities, and that's tax money and community impact fees. Now, everyone on the commission and a lot of people in the audience are very familiar with the fact that the tax money is limited insofar as there's a ceiling that the legislature set for assessments on marijuana products, and therefore establishments. 6.25% sales tax, a 10.75% excise tax, and an optional up to 3% local tax on retail sales only. So what about the other category of money, the community impact fees? The community impact fee authorized by Chapter 94G, Section 3D is optional and separate and apart from the taxes. Nevertheless, the tax limitations provide context and are a useful starting point for how we talk about the community impact fee. Simply put, if some amount of money is not a fee, it may be viewed as a tax. If it is a tax and it is not authorized by the legislature, it may be viewed as impermissible. So, what is the community impact fee and what is permissible? The court cases inform us generally about what is a fee and and that is really where we need to start, because at bottom, a community impact fee is just that, it's a fee. There's no new ground here. We are unique insofar as our subject matter, but not unique insofar as being guided by the decisional law on fees. It's worth noting that the fee concept is well trod in administrative law and in municipal law context. And as I said before, the decisional law on the matter of fees is ample. And it's with that in mind that we can outline some basics about fees generally. Fees are charged in exchange for a particular government service which benefits the paying party, and it has to be sufficiently special and specific to that party as opposed to the general public. Fees are voluntary. That doesn't mean you can choose not to pay the fee and still get the benefit.
So what does voluntary mean?
It means that you can choose to forego both the payment and the benefit and be on your way, unlike taxes, which we all know are certain. The fee is collected to compensate for the cost of providing the benefit. It is not intended to be a revenue generator. So it's with that in mind that we look at the plain language of the statute, section 3D of chapter 94G, to discern what is permissible in a community impact fee specifically. Now, we don't have specific elements within the statute of what can be included in the fee, but we do have a directive that the community impact fee is 1, optional, not mandatory. 2, it's reasonably related to the costs imposed upon the municipality by the operation of the marijuana establishment. 3, it's capped at 3% of gross annual sales, which of course means that it can be less than 3%. And 4, that it is strictly time limited to a term of no more than 5 years, which of course means that it can also be in place for fewer than 5 years. The guidance addresses each of these in turn. So what does it mean to be reasonably related? So the guidance that we are going to issue, if agreed upon by the commission, states that the commission views fees that are reasonably related as those that compensate the municipality for its actual and anticipated expenses resulting from the operation of the marijuana establishment. Case law tells us that costs associated with planning are okay. However, it is important that municipalities identify the plan specifics to justify the fee. There needs to be a reasonable relation. The fee cannot merely be a fee without designation of its origins or justification of its amount. Finally, the fee charge needs to be proportional to the cost or impact claimed by the community, and again, decisional law tells us that. 2, the cap of 3% on the community impact fee is a strict limit. Any fee that is more than 3% is not a community impact fee. If there is an additional agreement and there is an additional payment, it would be wise for those payments to comply with the legal requirements for fees that are set forth in case law, spelled out previously. And 3, finally, the community impact fee is limited to 5 years. It can be less than 5 years, but by statute, it can't be more. Now this of course means that if you look at it and perhaps there is a negotiation that is ongoing where it may be difficult to discern what the specific costs are that need to be justified, perhaps it may make sense for the parties negotiating on that fee to consider a fee that's shorter than 5 years. And under the statute, the information justifying those fees is public record, and also in accordance with our regulations, upon renewal, there is a request that the costs associated with the host community agreement be submitted by the marijuana establishment as part of the renewal. So there may be an opportunity there for there to be a further discussion and talk about the community impact fee and what parts of the community impact fee may remain intact and what might want to be negotiated. So that is the overview of the host community guidance that was drafted that I put before the commission for consideration today. I'm happy to take any questions and would welcome a discussion about the content of the host community agreement, which goes into greater detail in writing.
First of all, thank you again, Commissioner McBride, for your leadership on this important issue. I would like to have a discussion on this to the extent that there are comments or questions from the other commissioners. And we can talk about Commissioner McBride's suggestion to postpone voting on this for 2 weeks, pending input and comments from others. Any comments from the commissioner, questions? Commissioner McBride? And Commissioner Doyle? I'm not surprised to see you raise your hand.
It's actually not a comment to Commissioner McBride, except again, to express my thanks and admiration that you tackled this subject and did it so well. It is actually more an encouragement for folks on all sides of this issue to take the time that you are given to comment, and particularly the lawyers listening in the room. I really want to hear, because we hear a lot anecdotally, but I want to actually see an argument, legal argument, including statutory construction on both sides of this issue. Rather than, just hearing about it and hearing complaints about it, I would like to see both sides of this issue break down in essentially legal briefs, Supreme Judicial Court worthy legal briefs. Our general counsel just came for the Supreme Judicial Court, so we've got a high standard to meet here. But I think it is important that we get this out and get it resolved as soon as possible. So I really appreciate Commissioner McBride taking that first step, and I invite everybody to participate in this process. That's it.
Other comments or questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Cotton.
I fully support everything in this guidance, and I want to thank you, Commissioner McBride, for your hard work on it. I hope that municipalities will find it helpful. I think that even though there's 2 local guidance documents being discussed today, and the other one is specifically marked equity, this one also specifically goes to the heart of equity, because before our commission can even look at any application, it has to have local approval, and every applicant must have a host community agreement in place. And so, therefore, the ability of small businesses, local businesses, women, veteran, farmer-owned businesses, econ empowerment, equity applicants, the ability for all of them to fairly negotiate a community host agreement that reflects the municipality's actual expenses or reasonably related expenses as laid out in the law is a critical factor, maybe even the most critical factor to creating a just and inclusive industry. And so if municipalities don't follow that law, they're creating an obstacle to the Commission's mission statement, which is to safely, equitably, and effectively implement the law. And we already know that barriers to entry, when they're too high at the local level, we end up with a market that is very slow to start up and that has a striking lack of diversity. And so the legislature wisely looked at that concern and balanced it against the concern that we don't want municipalities to bear any kind of costs or burden from these businesses. We want the communities that welcome these facilities to benefit from the tax revenue, to have their costs covered, to be able to accept voluntary donations. But keeping in mind that the ability of small entrepreneurs to access this market is also a priority, they put a strict cap on those fees. That strict cap is 3%. Here. So I hope that this guidance is helpful for those who have questions about that. Lastly, I just wanted to flag one part of the guidance, and it's not an edit, it's just a flag. On section 1, under community impact fee, what are examples of required conditions? There is a list, what is permissible as part of the community impact fee? There's a list of some anticipated costs that may reasonably be included. And so the first fee, traffic intersection design studies where additional heavy traffic is anticipated, environmental impact studies anticipated as a result of cultivation, and public safety personnel overtime costs during time where higher congestions or crowds are anticipated, I see as actual costs that are expected due to the presence of the establishment. The fourth one, additional substance abuse prevention programming during the first years of operation, is what I would see as a voluntary donation. And that term voluntary donation has come up a lot. I think this is a very good example where a business might say, in addition to the costs that our business will bring to a municipality, we also want to contribute to substance abuse prevention programming. but that would still be included in the fee of up to $3.
I just said, I want to thank Commissioner McBride for the work that she's done on this. I know that this has been a very contentious issue throughout the Commonwealth. Commissioners have been in many cities and towns and have heard from the municipalities. One, they lack a lot of education surrounding this issue. You know, we have to remember where this came from. It was a ballot initiative that turned into a law, which turned into where we are today. And so in a lot of that time, I'm not too sure how many of the municipal officials were actually following the path. Having said that, and I appreciate the comments of Commissioner Title, I do want to just add that last bullet point, additional substance abuse prevention programming during the first years of operation. From a public health perspective, a lot of these cities and towns are creating substance abuse prevention task force in their towns. And that when we are introducing a substance, we like to talk about alcohol and say how alcohol is a substance, well marijuana is a substance as well. And so additional funding to already established task force and prevention programming, I can see as an anticipated cost because clearly we need a lot of prevention and we need education. I've heard from across the state that our public safety personnel are being called because people don't know how to utilize the substance. They're overutilizing the substance. There's concerns that, you know, something bad is happening to them. They call 911, ambulances come, and people tend to get attention that way. So I really think that the substance abuse prevention programming can be added to the list. I understand that for some people it's optional, but I really think that as this starts to progress and these facilities start to open, we need to start to talk more about public health and the public health aspect of this, because the reality is, and we see it with alcohol all the time, when you introduce a substance to cities and towns, and sometimes in those equitable areas, and you have people of lower income and you have people that have been disproportionately affected, this does have an effect. And so instead of hiding our heads in the sand and pretending it doesn't exist, I really think that part of the conversation with municipalities needs to be some of the public health aspects of this, just as public safety with intersections and the attention of the public safety personnel. So just as an added thought.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm going to wait my turn patiently.
I actually just have one more piece to so we're issuing this guidance, as has been pointed out by several commissioners, in the context of there being questions about what the content of post-community agreements should be. It's on the heels of anecdotal evidence that there may be some concerns about how a select group of certain municipalities are acting, but it's also in the absence of a lot of information about how many municipalities are approaching post-community agreements and generally the regulation and the integration of cannabis commerce into the fabric of their communities. And so it's with that in mind that I also just want to point out that another component of this is gathering that information. It's gathering the information in regard to response to the actual guidance, but also it's about gathering information from municipalities generally. With that in mind, with the good work of Commissioner Doyle and David Lakeman, our Director of Government Affairs, a survey went out to municipalities earlier this week, about Monday, that is seeking to collect just that information and to collect examples of post-community agreements that they have entered into or are negotiating, as well as a host of other information generally about the fabric of how this fits into the community, travel community. So I just want to highlight that also, that I do believe, even as we issue this guidance and start to seek the feedback, that this is a work in progress and needs to be a work in progress.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you mentioning the survey, and also not just Commissioner Doyle, but also our Director of Government Affairs, David Lakeman. Thank you for your role in the survey. And I'm sure I'm not thanking other people that should be thanked, but I totally support getting more information on this because there is a lot of anecdotal data, but we don't have a lot of facts. And I know that the survey, aside from asking a lot of questions, is also asking, if I'm correct, Commissioner Doyle, voluntarily for the respondents to send us a copy of executed host community agreements, which I think is imperative that we have the opportunity to view that. I'd like to pick up on that though and ask the commission or the commissioners to consider what, if we have the ability to collect these agreements either voluntarily or subsequently if we decide to modify our regulations to require the submission of HCAs, and I'm not suggesting we debate that right now, but my question is, what do we do with these host community agreements? What review should we do? What enforcement, if any, rights do we have? I think collecting data is great. And I'm totally in support of it, but I recall a conversation that we had at the commission back in December about what role, if any, we should play in respect to enforcing these host community agreements. And I think based upon just the anecdotal evidence that we've got to date, that it's worth having that discussion again, and I'd just be interested in the thoughts of the other commissioners. And again, I support the idea of coming back and revisiting this in 2 weeks, but I'd like to get some thoughts about what, if any, enforcement authority we might have on this.
Mr. Chairman, I think the first question that I have, being one of the non-lawyers on the commission.
Well, that's why I was asking the question, so go ahead.
I can get you therapy if you need it, Mr. Chairman.
What do you think, do what?
Is as a regulatory body, what role, what legal avenue do we have? I mean, and I think that's something for the attorneys to answer. I don't know if our general counsel wants to take a chance at that, but I think first and foremost, there's been a lot of anecdotal things said to me that, well, you as a commission can enforce this, or you can tell them to go back and change this and renegotiate. For me, it's a legal question. What are we legally allowed to do? Because I think we need to set realistic expectations and not have people think that we can just change things on a whim. We're not the legislature. We can't just change Chapter 55, no longer. Thank God this weekend. But I think we have to really be truthful and honest with people and not give any false hope as to what we can physically do here at the commission.
I agree with that comment. I don't know that we want a definitive answer, but I do think it's something that if what I was looking for is the Commission's willingness to explore this issue over the next couple of weeks as we come back to review this document and make a final vote on it, to have a more informed opinion about what, if any, legal obligations we have. But I'm happy to sustain a conversation as why I raised the topic. Commissioner Title?
My suggestion would be, I like Commissioner McBride's idea of having a short public comment period. I think we should expand that to the entire issue of local controller general, and then revisit the discussion.
That's a much more articulate thing to say, so I agree. Are there other suggestions? Is that
My one question is, what do you mean expand, Commissioner Title, about the entire issue of local control? Because I think one of the big pieces is the community host agreement. And then, I mean, I've heard lots of people comment on zoning process, but that's 351 cities and towns have their zoning process.
I would suggest as a starting point the host community agreement, and then not to skip ahead, but the local equity guidance, and then the letter from the legislators about, well, I have it in front of me. It is our interpretation and intent that the CCC has the authority required.
This is a letter from Cusack and Jalen.
This is a letter from Senator Jalen and Representative Cusack, and it says, it is our interpretation and intent that the CCC has the authority and is required to therefore review any such community host agreements to ensure their compliance with the statute. So I think that that issue and then the two areas of guidance.
Sure, I think Commissioner McBride just reviewed with respect to host community agreement, and then what the fifth agenda item here, the economic empowerment, or the third agenda item, the equity focused municipal guides that we'll discuss shortly. That would be the extent of the conversation. So not zoning, other issues of local control.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that we do want public comment on some of these guidances that we've had. I guess my concern is that getting comments on what legislative intent was, again, will be anecdotal, because legislative intent came from the legislation that was released from the Committee on Marijuana Policy, which was subsequently debated, changed, and then signed into law. So being a former legislator, intent changes during the debate. What comes out of committee?
And after the fact.
What comes out of committee is not what usually ends up on the governor's desk. And so, while I appreciate the comments and I welcome comments from the public at all times, I just wonder if that's going to be a a good use of our
Let
funds.
me be explicit. I suggest that we take the guidance document that Commissioner McBride just reviewed, the one that we're going to discuss, that Commissioner Title drove, discuss that. Certainly welcome input on any topics. Obviously consider the input of Senator Jalen and Representative Kuzak, and get input from General Counsel, our General Counsel, and have that conversation. But I think totally consistent with what you were just saying. Clearly, we welcome comments on anything at any time, but in terms of our deliberation on the legal issues, I think the two basic points there are the opinion of General Counsel and the letter from the Senator and Representative.
So then it'd be my hope that we take each one of these individually, so that we establish, and maybe the executive director can say that for us, that we initially established that we're gonna take a 2-week comment period on the host community agreement guidance, and then come back as a commission and revisit that. I don't know if that needs a vote or we can just establish it, but I think we should keep them separate, because people are gonna get confused by
Wait,
it.
I'm confused now by what you're suggesting, Commissioner Flanagan. Keep what separate?
What our intention is of each one. I mean, you have 3 guidances up there.
Yeah, no, right now we're talking about the host community agreement, guys, that's all we're talking about. And what's on the table is to take 2 weeks, get public comment, reconvene to discuss host community agreement guidance with the input we've gotten from the public, obviously, but the input we've gotten from the representative and the senator, input from our general counsel, and then obviously discussion of the commission. And so we're speaking specifically, and we'll have the same discussion for the other 4 issues, but for the host community agreement guidance, specifically what I just articulated.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I may have misheard Commissioner Kettle. I thought she was also suggesting that we do that same 2-week comment period on the guidance on equitable policy.
She was, and as a matter of order, I was just saying, let's wait, we'll come back and discuss that.
Oh.
When we get to that agenda item, but I think it's a perfect suggestion, but I think that's Commissioner Flanagan's suggestion, that we treat each of these issues one by one.
Yes.
So we'll have that conversation. So unless there's objection, I don't believe a vote is necessary, we just will come back, we have this on the agenda for, go ahead.
Okay, I just, as a point of clarification, or just for a request, I would prefer that if we're talking about the host community agreements, that, I don't think that we should be limiting what we're considering to any particular comments. I think that we should just be considering any comments,
Right.
regarding host community agreements wherever they, they have come from.
Fair enough, I was just setting expectations in terms of waiting, but that's perfectly fair. So I think it's decided, and if you have language that you'd like to, I don't think it's necessary, I think we just agree that we will take this issue back up in 2 weeks. We welcome comments from anybody that wishes to make them, and we will seek guidance, as well as the comments, we will seek guidance from our general counsel on legal issues.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear as far as setting expectations. I think it's important that if this is the commission's decision to accept comments on it, we can accommodate that. We'll post a notice on our website and we'll give folks an avenue by which they can submit comments to the commission's general mailbox. I think it'd be important to get comments by that Monday.
That's fine.
So as to compile and circulate to each of you.
I think that's a great suggestion, so absolutely.
So I would recommend accepting comments through the 6th, August 6th.
Our next meeting is August 9th, that Thursday. I think that's a great suggestion, thank you.
Just to accommodate us from a staff standpoint of compiling all of that.
Okay, are we all set? Everybody comfortable?
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead, Commissioner Khan.
So as a matter of process, when we did the draft regulations, I believe we took a vote, and then we had an open comment period, and then when we came back, each of us would make motions for changes based on public comment. So do we want to follow that same process?
Commissioner
Yeah, I don't think it's necessary. I can just defer consideration on this as we described. Or do you want? Well, but I think that there needs to be a motion made by the commission to put the host community agreement out as drafted for comment, leave a comment period open, accept comments until August 6th, and then deliberate on those comments.
Okay.
Fine with that if the commission wants to join.
I just appreciate
Sure.
your I'll take your guidance on this.
I think it's fine if you want to formalize that, that's fine, I don't think it's necessary,
Yeah,
but
well, there's no, I guess
it's,
we can be extra careful,
Yeah,
there's no problem.
exactly.
So can I ask you to articulate what we
that we publish the draft guidance on host community agreements that we discussed during today's meeting, that we open a public comment period that will remain open until 5 o'clock on Monday, August 6th.
We got till before 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
And that those comments will be considered by the commission at its next meeting on Thursday, August 9th.
Can I have a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, let the commission, or let the record show the commission unanimously approve that recommendation. Thank you. So I think we're ready to move on to the next guidance topic, which is positive impact plan. And again, my thanks to Commissioner Title for her leadership on this. Are you prepared to talk about this, Commissioner Title?
I don't have a presentation prepared.
But you're still incredibly articulate, so I'm sure you'll be fine.
So if you look at the draft, it's fairly straightforward. It's a 3-page guidance document. And as the chairman had mentioned earlier, the purpose is to clarify the elements of the positive impact plan. The guidance also clarifies the difference between the plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact and separately the diversity plan. So it goes through the background of the law that led us to pass these requirements, and then it goes through how the commission has interpreted that term, disproportionately impacted communities, and then it explains the elements of a plan, which are goals, programs, and then measurement and accountability, and goes into more background on each of those, along with some examples of positive impact plan programs, but it's very clear that the programs may include but are not limited to the items on that list. And then finally, it discusses metrics for measurement and accountability and the measures that the commission has put into place as examples of metrics, but not necessarily what the plan has to use.
Again, my thanks to your leadership on this. Are there questions or comments on this? And you're not proposing to defer this?
No.
Okay. Any questions or comments on this document? Commissioner Doyle?
No, I just couldn't hear Commissioner Title.
No, she'd like to get, we can obviously discuss it. She sees no reason to defer the discussion and vote on this.
Okay, so then, yes. I thought overall this is very good and in fact hit on themes that we have been highlighting as we go around the state, talking to municipalities about, flexible zoning and not just throwing everything into the industrial zone, because that was often what was done with the medical marijuana.
That's the wrong one. Talking about the positive impact plan.
You're
on the next agenda item, which is equity focused municipal guidance.
Sorry, I know that.
We will get to you very quickly.
I apologize. I was doing two things at once, and look where it got me. So I had no comments on this one. I thought it was fun. Did I scare you? I apologize.
We can also set her up for the next one. Now she's really scared about the
Now
next
you
one.
No, but it's good comments.
And so we are on the guidance on required positive impact plan and diversity plan, just to be clear. Are there any comments or questions from other commissioners?
I do. I was doing two things at once.
Commissioner Flanagan?
No.
I have no comments. I think, again, this is excellent. I appreciate your leadership. I think this is important as part of our objectives to build a equitable and diverse industry. So I appreciate this, and I think it will be very helpful to the applicants to have clarity on what we're looking for them to provide as part of the application process. So I would like a motion to approve this guidance.
I move to approve this guidance, subject to staff review changes.
Can I have a second, please? Let the record show that Commissioner Tyler made the motion to approve, subject to staff input and modification. And Commissioner McBride seconded the motion. All in favor? Aye. Let the record show the Commission has approved this guidance. And again, thank you very much, Commissioner Title. I think you're still on point, however. Next item is equity-focused municipal guidance, and I think you've already been put on alert that Commissioner Doyle might have a thing or two to say on this topic. But could you get us started, please?
Sure, and just at the outset, I do suggest that we put this out for public comment for is what I'm referring to as local equity guidance, and I would say it's different from our previous guidance in that it is a set of recommendations, purely recommended policies, and they are in response to advice from our Cannabis Advisory Board, as well as several local elected officials that have reached out and said that they want to have an equitable process at the local level, but they're not sure how to do it, and would like some recommendations to be walked through the process. So the document starts with a background on the various equity-related provisions in the law, and then it goes through an overview of a series of questions that a city or town could ask and discuss related to its local values and its own equity goals, understanding that every municipality is different, but as a suggestion for how to approach the process, the questions are caps on licenses necessary? What license types will be allowed in the municipality? Should a local excise tax be authorized? How should each license type be zoned? What municipal entity or entities will oversee the prospective licensee process? What process will prospective licensees need to follow, and what is the timeline for that process? And finally, how will prospective licensees be selected to move forward, and what municipal entity or entities will negotiate the host community agreement with them? And then it goes through each question with a set of recommendations. So happy to discuss it now, also happy to make a similar motion as we did on the host community agreement guidance and come back and rediscuss after review and comment.
So let's have a discussion right now, just so in case there are any issues that are raised. We have 2 weeks to address those issues or concerns, and then based upon the precedent we set with the other guidance, we'll take a vote. But first, let's have a discussion. Are there any comments or questions on this document? Commissioner Doyle, I guess you already raised your hand, so you're first.
Can I talk about the positive impact?
Sure, please do.
Great. Okay. As I was saying before, this dovetails nicely with some of the things that we've been presenting during municipal outreach. And some of the comments I have are really more mundane and can be, I think, dealt with by staff. We actually learned some things as we went around municipalities in terms of words and references that we used in the municipal guidance that we probably need to correct, and they're repeated here, so I'll make those suggestions. But it's sort of things like references to package stores. Apparently that's a little bit confusing because section 15 is broader than that. So I would suggest that we take out those references, and I'll recommend that we take it out of the other municipal guidance as well. And then, again, some of it is more wording things and minor things like typos. One thing that I had a question on is in the buffer zone discussion on page 4, which is about halfway down the page. And so that's where we recite well, we paraphrase the statute and describe it. You know, the statute sets forth the 500-foot buffer around established kindergarten through 12 public or private schools, and identify that the municipalities may choose to reduce the size of that buffer, and caution that it's unclear, it's not a matter that has been reviewed by courts as to whether creating buffer zones at the local level, such as around parks or I'm saying playground, it says parks, are legally permissible. I think the next sentence may be just a little strong. And so I think we have the right idea in the rest of the paragraph. I just would like to maybe work on rewording that a little bit. And that, for people following along, it basically just, the commission suggested additional buffer zones may not be necessary and cautions communities against acting arbitrarily. So I think we could get that same thought across with perhaps different language. So I'd like to work on doing that, bringing that back in that 2 weeks. The next 2 paragraphs after that, and then the paragraph at the top of 5 are probably at the area where I'm most uncomfortable. And that is where we are summarizing the state of research on certain issues related to marijuana today. And that makes me very uncomfortable doing that as a commission. And I think the same points that we're making in here can be made without characterizing research a certain way. And so I would prefer to pull those out while still retaining the underlying thought about, being very responsible as a community in terms of looking at what the actual impacts on a community are when you put a marijuana facility in it. So that's essentially my comment on that.
You wanted to propose or work with Commissioner Powell and
Oh,
staff on
absolutely.
alternative language?
Yeah.
That would accomplish the same objective.
And yeah, I think there's actually already language here that we can use and get to the same place without referring to that research or characterizing research out there, because research is ongoing and will change on a regular basis. I think the last very substantive thing on the same area of the guidance is the issue of, and I applaud the thought here in terms of making a streamlined process on the municipal level. And for those who don't have this in front of them, the section starts off, what municipal entity or entities will oversee the prospective licensing process, select licensees to move forward, and negotiate post-community agreements. And then the guidance goes on to suggest that it essentially, if I'm understanding it correctly, should be one entity that does both. And my concern is that I don't think that is typically done either at the state level or the municipal level, where we've got open meeting law bodies involved. Looking at us as an example, typically our staff or the executive director or general counsel will negotiate a contract and then present it to us. So I'm a little worried if we suggested it be one body, we're actually going to slow the process down, because open meeting law bodies take time to meet, etc. So if we can get, if we perhaps can work together on that same thought and maybe refine it a little.
It's clear the objective is to try to make it as efficient as
Exactly.
possible. We don't share that objective, so.
Yeah.
Anything else, Commissioner?
I'm just checking that it's, on page 6, it's the second to last paragraph. And yes, and so what this is discussing is encouraging municipalities to develop a clear process and timeline for prospective licensees, which obviously we all want. I think that helps the public follow along. It helps applicants be clear about what process we're supposed to follow. And I just wanted to discuss with you the wording here, because when I read it, it suggested to me a procurement-like model, and that may not be the intent. Because my concern with procurement-like models is that does tend to favor the more well-financed, larger applicants, and so I would just be concerned about suggesting only that.
This is the paragraph starting with regardless of the.
Yeah.
All right.
Anything else, Commissioner?
Nope, that's it
Thank
for
you.
me. Thank you.
Commissioner?
Could I
Yeah, go ahead,
say,
Commissioner Cobb.
those are all very valuable, reasonable comments, so I thank you for that. On the second to last paragraph, yes, if you would just suggest an edit that doesn't suggest the
Yeah.
procurement process, that's fine.
Yep.
The previous one on the different entities who might be subject to open meeting law, that's a hard, yes, I agree. I did try to actually suggest that in the last sentence of that section, where it says the municipality may prefer to designate one entity to oversee the selection process and another to negotiate the host community agreements, but if there's a way to make that the primary recommendation and specify more.
Yeah, I just have to work with you on language to
Okay.
see if we can tease that out a little.
Okay, and then, so on page 4, with regard to the buffer zone, so So my original draft was actually way, way stronger than I anticipated. So, and I'm definitely not, just to put everybody, because I'm not going to put anybody on the staff on the spot, but I did ask for help from the general counsel. And then as far as the research, I actually asked Dr. Johnson to rewrite it. And so I would be fine if everyone else is with delegating the presentation of that research to the staff so that we're not sort of arguing about research amongst us.
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I'm not clear
yeah.
what you mean on delegating.
Well, okay, so if we are rewriting those two paragraphs, there are, I think, several different points, right? So if we were to delegate to the staff to review the research and represent in the most accurate way possible these issues and the current research on it, that would be my preference over leaving it out, because I think that we do have a duty on us to represent what the facts are and what the evidence show. I think it's important for the decision making.
Okay, and so I think we just may be in different places on that, and maybe we can talk in the next 2 weeks. I have a discomfort with it.
Yeah, my preference for this would be, let's work on this issue. I understand your point, but let's work on this issue over the next 2 weeks, and if we do have to have another conversation, we'll have some, let's just agree to work on this, given that we have, not being aligned or this conflict. But I'm actually quite comfortable just giving this conversation that we're gonna come back with something that I think we're all gonna be pretty close to the line. Let's work on that over the next 2 weeks, rather than discuss it today, if that's okay.
That's fine. I do think we should, we don't have to talk about it right now, but I do think that we should be comfortable presenting what research says on various issues rather than never taking a position on it.
I will agree to put that on the agenda at some, because I think that's a really complicated conversation, but I agree with you, it should be had, so I think ownership will get it on the agenda shortly.
My one concern, and I appreciate the work that Commissioner Heidel did, I know that you put a lot of thought into the documents that you produced, and I appreciate all that. My one concern is that with a guidance coming from a regulatory body, is there a need to include studies at all? And sort of be like, listen, this is the guidance for municipalities, regardless of what the studies show, this is like what we're saying for you to get the job done. Because I think we can get into the conversation of people saying, well, you put this study in here and I bet this study to counter it, and then it turns into a conversation that doesn't need to be. So if we keep on the track that as a regulatory body, we're just trying to guide cities and towns into saying, listen, let's get this done. Because I look at the process on page 5, and it says what process will prospective licenses need to follow and what is the timeline. Like, that's regulatory. That's the stuff that I think we should put in here. And while I appreciate all the work that Dr. Johnson has done and is doing on our research piece of this, maybe this should be a little more black and white and clear.
I think that's the same point, Commissioner. So I think that is actually a worthy conversation. I think that's the conversation that Commissioner Tittle was suggesting we have. So I think let's work on this specific document and this issue, but then we'll also have the broader conversation, to your point, Commissioner Flanagan, about how we use and how we reference research in our documents. So I think I'm completely in accord with that. Commissioner McBride? So then, just as we had the precedent for host community guidance, can I get a recommendation that we agree to the language? I'm trying to remember your language, Commissioner McBride, but if you have a Commissioner Todd, but essentially to put this on the agenda for 2 weeks to work the issue in the interim, allow for public comment up to 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on August 6th.
I move that we publish the draft guidance on local equity and open a public comment period, open until 5 p.m. EST, Monday,
August 6th. And it's on the agenda for next time. Can I have a second, please? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
The Commission, no, let the record show the Commission unanimously approved that. And again, my thanks to Commissioner Tittle for your work on this.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
This is an aside related to the publication of this. We will also circulate it to the entire advisory board, both pieces.
I think that's a great idea.
To explicitly solicit their feedback.
I think that's a great idea. The next agenda item, I think, is going to be a little bit more straightforward, perhaps, but Commissioner Doyle, would you take the lead on the report to the legislature?
Yes, thank you. And I would like to acknowledge the contributions of our Director of Government Affairs, Dave Lakeman, and our General Counsel, Kristen Bailey, as well as our Executive Director, Sean Collins, in helping bring this document to where it is today and hopefully getting it filed with the legislature. This is a statutory requirement that comments on the state of the participation of agriculture, farmers, and businesses of all sizes in the marijuana for adult use industry. And so we have prepared a legislative report that provides background and history on how we got to where we are today. It explains the governing law, explains the work done by the commission and its staff, and talks about the different licensing opportunities that are specifically targeted to farmers and businesses of all sizes, as well as the production growth controls on cultivation of marijuana. It also talks about the steps taken under the leadership of the chairman to reduce fee structure and costs for small businesses and the agricultural community related to the adult use for marijuana industry. It also discusses training that will be available particularly after July 1st, 2019 through the Responsible Vendor Training Program, which in itself may create business opportunities for those who do not wish to engage directly in the adult use marijuana business, but are willing to provide training to those that do, as well as the training provided through our social equity program and the opportunities that will create for small businesses and farmers. We also discuss operating requirements, including security, and how that works to benefit small businesses and farmers, as well as discussing very specific issues relating to farmers regarding agricultural preservation restrictions and what's known as 61A law, that refers to General Law Chapter 61A, which is tax protection for land in agricultural use. And particularly with regard to this section, I must recognize that we, in developing this report, worked with the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources and very much appreciate the very substantive and thoughtful comments they provided to us on the report. We also recommend legislation to protect the trade secrets and other commercial or financial information of farmers and or businesses of all sizes to essentially add to, with regard to the Cannabis Control Commission solely, an additional exemption that mimics an exemption available under federal law to protect trade secrets and commercial or financial information obtained from a person to the Cannabis Control Commission if such information is deemed by the Commission to be privileged or confidential. And we will be informed in that determination by an abundance of federal case law on the interpretation of the parallel federal law on this issue. So we are recommending that the legislature consider that. We highlight some other complications under federal law as it relates to marijuana, most of which are well known, and look forward to submitting this to the legislature.
Again, for your leadership. Any comments or questions? Commissioner McBride.
I just want to thank Commissioner Doyle. I know that a ton of work went into this, and that it was not necessarily the easiest document to put together. So I just wanted to state my appreciation for the work you did. Thank you.
You got comments? Questions? Commissioner Pell?
I agree. I want to thank Commissioner Doyle for all of your work on this and your just passion for helping out farmers in general and in understanding their very complicated issues. I don't have any suggested changes to the document, but I do have a suggestion about our next report, which is due at the end of this year. Yes. I think it's probably safe to say that we will likely have concerns about the participation of farmers and businesses of all sizes. I believe it's already in our research agenda that we are tracking the numbers and that we are tracking the barriers to entry. I would suggest or propose that a month before the next report is due, we have a report on those items, and that we discuss amongst ourselves our additional recommendations for legislation for that second report.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Great.
just for context of that, so Commissioner Title, I've written a note to do that. This statutory section requires us to submit a report to the Joint Committee on Marijuana Policy, as we did with the previous report relative to the DPH transfer. It also includes the House and Senate Committees on Ways and Means, and I will also submit it to the House and Senate clerks, just so that the entire legislature has access to it. The due date, of course, was 1 year of passage of the law, so that's why it's at 28. The next report is due the end of the calendar year, so I'll make a note to.
End of this calendar year.
Correct.
Okay. Any other comments? Then can I have a motion to approve the release of this report to the bodies that the executive director just articulated?
So moved.
Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor? Let the record show that the commission has approved the release of this report. And again, my thanks and our thanks to Commissioner Doyle for your leadership. Next topic is economic empowerment applicants, and I just want to make a few comments before we get started on this. One is, as I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, at our last meeting 2 weeks ago, Commissioner Tuttle asked that we put this agenda item on our agenda for the next meeting, which we have done. As I've mentioned, there was a survey that was released on Friday to the 300 plus applicants for priority status, economic empowerment priority status. We have 60 plus responses. We will hopefully get more responses in a subsequent meeting. I think discuss this in more detail, but I think it, at a very high level, it identifies some issues that we want to at least be aware of and discuss. And so we are going to put up one slide with just some high level summaries, but I can't caveat enough that we can't jump to conclusions or take this as gospel based upon what is right now a relatively small number of responses compared to the audience that we're seeking input from. But I still think it's important to put high level on the table as long as I provide that caveat. The other thing is that I also want to provide a second caveat, which is this is a concern I think that we all have, in that the law is very clear on the requirements of how this industry rolls out and how it affects and includes candidates from disproportionately impacted communities and from other diversity targets. And we take that seriously. We will monitor it. We will change what we're doing if we see it's not working, and we're not going to rest until it's done. I take that commitment extraordinarily seriously, and I think I can speak for the other commission members as well. So I think it's very important that we discuss this and start talking about how it's working and how we might want to try to help these sets of objectives along. I will also, though, caveat this by saying it's early, and I personally I'm not ready to draw any conclusions after 7 provisional licenses, or 5 provisional licenses have been issued and 7 more will be discussed today. I think it is premature to draw any conclusions about how this industry is going to evolve. It's going to take some time. As I said, we will monitor how this process works. We will tweak whatever we need to tweak to make it work. If we need to go back to the legislature and ask for changes in the legislation, we will do so. We will not rest until we get this right. But let's not, as I said, jump to conclusions after 5 provisional licenses have been issued. I really appreciate people's understanding and patience of that. With that said, Commissioner Tyler, before I show the high-level results of the survey, do you have other comments you'd like to make?
I don't think the survey results will be breaking news to anyone in the room.
No, I think that's fair. So we have 2 slides. One is just the high level of the survey itself. And Commissioner Tyler, since you provided leadership on survey, would you mind describing kind of how it was prepared and how it was distributed?
Sure. Actually, I need to thank several members of our staff, but particularly Dr. Julie Johnson, Cedric Sinclair, and Martine Russell for their help turning this around in time for us to review it today. So this survey was primarily to identify the barriers that the economic empowerment applicants are facing, and to do so now because we only have 3 applications from those 123 applicants.
3 completed applicants.
3 completed. Well,
3 were all 4 packets have been submitted.
Right. All 4 packets is different from completed, because
right.
If it was completed, completed due to the fact that they have priority or would have come in front of us
Right.
by now.
Right.
So it was sent on Friday. As of yesterday, we received 63 responses. The survey remains open. There are also some fill in the blank questions, particularly if you identified an additional barrier to entry that wasn't listed. So I expect when the survey closes, we'll get a look at that.
Is there a close date on the survey, just for public information?
I don't know.
Not as of today,
Okay.
but I think that's something you can set an expectation.
We probably should, because I do commit to, at some future point, when we've got a greater level of response and a chance to review some of the written comments, that we come back and have a much more complete discussion of the survey at a subsequent meeting. Okay, any other comments before we show the high level data, Commissioner Town?
And so the survey asked if you did not apply, why not? And then asked the respondents to check all of the answers that were applicable and then to rank them from 1 to 5, and also include any other reasons. So you can see in the order that they were ranked in some: difficulty raising funds or capital, still developing business concept or plan, difficulty obtaining approval from a city or town, my desired license type is not offered, specifically social consumption or delivery, and difficulty understanding the application.
Do you have any comments, or like comments from other commissioners? Or questions?
Well,
Commissioner Flanagan?
I have a couple of concerns that, given the fact that over 300 were sent out and we've only gotten roughly 60 back, that this is very preliminary. The second thing is that we are all moving down the same path at the same time, and I feel that the fact that this is a new process for many people here in Massachusetts, that we need to keep in mind the fact that when it comes to funding and it comes to business plans and it comes to dealing with the cities and towns, that is going to be a concern early on, because everyone is sort of getting their ducks in a row at the same time. And I don't mean to harp on the cities and towns, because I realize that they're facing a lot in a short amount of time. But the reality is that I really feel that we're doing as much as we can as a commission to move this process forward. I think, given the fact that the license type that people want are not offered, that's not going to change until we take up the regs again. We know that conversation is coming. So if people are holding out, I don't see that as a barrier. I see that as a fact that we promised to take the conversation up. We are going to take that conversation up when we open the regs. And so people can either choose to try to do something else, or they can wait it out. But there's also no guarantee that those two types of deliveries, those two types of licenses are even going to come to fruition. We just don't know that yet, because we haven't had the conversation. Having said that, I think that given our community outreach division of our commission, Shakia's doing a great job when she's starting to go out to people in the community. That's going to help this process. We realize that the money piece of this is difficult. Short of being able to go to a bank, people are trying to find creative ways to fund their plans. And I really think that we can have a more substantive conversation once we've gotten more responses back. I think that, if we're very strategic about this, if we're very thoughtful about this, give people time. I'm impressed that this many people responded by Friday, because that's a quick turnaround. But I think that we need to have this conversation a little bit down the road, as people are coming online and people are being part of the process. I can see the concern. I understand the concerns. Clearly looking at this graph, but I think this is also this also has the possibility to spark some fear in people who may now say, wait, if all these people are having problems, I may not want to participate, and we don't want to do that. We want this to be as inclusive process as possible. Coming from North Central Massachusetts, we're often the last people thought of in the Commonwealth. If you go to the Berkshires, they're saying that they're often the last people thought of in the Commonwealth. There are different types of thoughts about this in different parts of the state, and I think we just need to work the plan that we have with the community outreach person, the social equity program that we have, and then people will start to understand and will be able to get some of the services that they've been looking for, and some of the supportive services like business plan creation and funding and banking and all the things that are gonna be part of that.
Commissioner McBride? Want to use my microphone? Here.
I just had an additional suggestion, because I've been in like the municipal, thinking about cities and towns forever, it seems. Given that data point,
Talking about the difficulty.
difficulty obtaining approval from a city or town, could we add a question to the survey asking what cities, what municipalities the folks responding have been talking to? And the reason I ask that is because it kind of goes to that general question about trying to collect as much info as we can to differentiate what's anecdotal versus what is a real issue, and to that end, where there is something that can be done to help resolve that issue. And the other piece of this, and I'll throw this out there, I know that I've talked about it before, and it's something that one of the first meetings when I was appointed to this commission that I had, this issue about post-community agreements in cities and towns was brought up at that point in time. And I said at that point in time to the individuals in the meeting, it would be really helpful if we could have a conversation with municipalities that were on the positive side of this, that were on the side where they were thinking about this and actively putting pieces into place to welcome businesses, and present a forum or some sort of whether it was a forum with a webinar or some sort of event where there could be a conversation that wasn't necessarily this commission talking about it, but was actually municipalities presenting to other municipalities about where there were opportunities and how they were approaching it. Because I think, as we've talked about all the way along, my sense here is that there are a lot of municipalities that are stepping back and sort of waiting to see what the lay of the land looks like, and waiting to see, what's my neighbor going to do? And I kind of want to look and see what they're doing before I dip my toe in here. So I think that this is to sort of dovetail with what Commissioner Flanagan just said. I think that there are a lot of pieces here that can still come into play. I look forward to getting the full spectrum of results from this survey, but I think that there are other components here that we also need to be asking and also need to be talking about.
I agree. Thank you. Other comments? Commissioner Gordon?
I would just like to add my support for a breakdown to get better understanding of that particular difficulty obtaining approval from a city or town. It would be interesting to get more detail on that.
Is that it?
That's it.
So I started this conversation by saying, these are preliminary results, and being trained in statistics, I know that you can't jump to conclusions, and I do think it's important that we get hopefully a greater level of response and get the kind of more specificity that Commissioner Doyle and Commissioner McBride were requesting. That being said, I look at this and my own reaction is, difficulty getting funds. That's not a surprise. We know that. It's something we've been working on. If anything, it kind of incents me personally to just work harder on that, because I think it's ultimately, in my opinion, going to be the biggest obstacle. But so I think that's one point. The other thing that comes out of this is, even though it's preliminary and even though it's 10 people, difficulty understanding the application, we should find out if that's an issue, because that's an easy fix. That's an easy fix. And so to me, this is not kind of a scorecard. It's not who's doing what wrong or anything. It's pretty interesting and things that are worth considering and pursuing. And I thought you were heading in this direction, but then you took kind of a detour, Commissioner McBride. One of the things that I think would be useful, I think surveys are great, and we should get some more data here. I think focus groups
are actually far more helpful in terms of really understanding issues. And my suggestion would be, obviously we need help with our staff on this. My suggestion would be maybe let's let this go for a little while longer, get some more feedback and survey responses. But once we have, something that's a little bit more concrete in terms of statistical significance, I actually think we should have some focus groups around the state where we just listen to some of these applicants and hear firsthand what are they running into in terms of municipal issues. If they don't understand the application, what is it that's confusing? Because again, that's an easy fix for us. But I think the best way we're going to get, I think the survey is great, but I think it should be followed up by focus groups, and clearly we need to do a few around the state if people agree with that proposal. So I would suggest that that's something that we would pursue. I'm happy to work with the executive director and staff in terms of how to organize that and bring it back to the commission for approval. But I think that would be a really important next step and something we should do relatively quickly.
I'm delighted to say I believe that's already in the works.
Oh, it's always, the only best ideas are always the staff doing it before I've even thought of it, so that's great.
We're working on it.
That's wonderful to hear.
But to your point about understanding the application, I take great pride in our application.
And I wasn't being critical whatsoever.
And I will endeavor to talk to those 10 folks.
So you better not say that, no. Okay.
We are working.
So there's good follow-up, and I do commit, as I said earlier, to, we should talk, do we want to put a time limit on the survey? But I do commit to bringing this back onto the agenda when we've had, we get hopefully some more responses. So what are your thoughts, Mr. Executive Director, about a time limit on the survey?
Well, so I think we definitely need a time, we need to close it at some point. I think it's worth identifying, it hasn't even been out there for a week yet, so we do have about 20% response. And I will talk with folks on the staff about at what percentage response rate do we kind of deem it to be substantive or sufficient enough to be scientific, but also wanting to make sure we can send possibly a reminder to those folks to complete the survey, and then also bearing in mind we need some time to turn around and compile those responses. Right. Especially since some questions do have a narrative response. So I guess what I'll say is I won't commit at this point to have a discussion of this on the agenda next time because we might not have all that done, but I will commit to, at the next commission meeting, having a timeline for having it on the agenda at a subsequent meeting. That's right. Commissioner Tom?
So I really like those suggestions. They largely echo what I had on my list for immediate next steps. I do think it's worth noting out loud that the law is clear that we shall prioritize review and licensing decisions for these applicants, and the fact that the benefit here is priority means that the more time goes on and the more licenses we grant, the less meaningful that benefit becomes. So I do think there is a sense of urgency here that we should recognize. Absolutely love the idea of a working group with those cities. General Counsel had mentioned that as well. If you'd like, Commissioner McBride, I would like to take the lead with you on forming that. If the staff's okay with that.
I'm definitely happy to do that, but I actually am sort of, I guess I'm kind of throwing it out there that I would actually love to see an organization other than the commission putting something like that together. I mean, if it's something where, our imprimatur of the commission would be helpful, then I can appreciate that. But yes, I threw it out there to a lot of people, and no one's taking the time.
Well, I guess then as part of the public comment, the organizations that are interested can let us know. I would add to, in terms of a suggestion to add to the survey what municipalities the applicants have been speaking to. I think that's a good idea. Also, as part of the public comment period, they can certainly reach out to us and let us know about that as well. Yes. So I had another great suggestion which came from our advisory board, Kim Napoli in particular, who have been working with commission members on presentations to lawyers that laid out the regulations and the application process, and she suggested doing similar events for econ empowerment applicants.
Any other comments?
Yes, one more.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think this is my last one. I do think it's important that all 5 of us hear directly from the econ empowerment applicants as opposed to just seeing the survey results, because as several people have mentioned, there are limitations when you just see a bar graph. Therefore,
Focus groups, yeah.
I suggest that we explore partnering with cities, perhaps the large cities on our disproportionate areas of impact list, on organizing hearings and having different commissioners attend them and hear from the public, particularly inviting the kind of power applicants.
Can I just ask you for a specific definition of the word hearings? When I think of hearings, I think it's something very formal as opposed to listening sessions like we did at the beginning of our process, and I'm not sure what you're proposing.
I think we could leave that up to the cities that we're exploring this with, if they're interested.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I share your concern that it's probably better to.
Talk like.
I apologize. I share your concern that it's probably better to.
You gotta be a little closer.
I share your concern that it may be better to focus to basically characterize these as more listening sessions. We could also for consideration of how best to that.
Let's work offline on this and develop a plan, and we'll bring it back. I think we're talking about the same thing. I just want to be careful about exactly how to characterize. But you learn much more by listening to people and being able to ask questions. You know, we're seeing survey responses. Those surveys are great. So I think we're all on board with doing something. I don't think a motion is necessary on this. We have some work to do, which is good. I will say I share Commissioner Title's sense of urgency, not because we have only 3 applicants thus far and we've only given 5 provisional licenses, none of which are to economic empowerment. That is not my source of concern. My source of concern is exactly the same, or urgency is exactly the same as Commissioner Title, which is that priority loses its benefit if it lasts too long. So I think this is something, while these data are not conclusive, we will get more information both through the survey and through the other mechanisms we just talked about. I personally have an enormous sense of urgency about figuring this out and continuing to learn how to make this happen. So, if there are no other comments on this topic, I think the last topic for discussion is a request from the Executive Director to have the authority to constitute the Suitability Review Committee. So do you have a specific request, Mr. Executive Director?
I do, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you know, the Commission maintains, pursuant to Chapter 94G, the ability to maintains all powers necessary to carry out and effectuate the purpose of the underlying statute, which of course includes the authority to establish a registration and license application process. Embedded within that is the ability to make suitability determinations. The regulations that were promulgated pursuant to the law allow that the Commission may, in its exercise of its discretion, make a suitability determination. But it goes on to say that the Commission may also delegate suitability determinations to the Executive Director, who may appoint a suitability review committee to advise me in that process. So as you see, it's very permissive language, but it's not definitive, and therefore I would seek the approval from the Commission, and I would seek that delegation to me, and also the purpose of that is actually to establish a suitability review committee, and then of course a process related to that. So as we endeavor to get through those remaining applications, in the event that something were to come up related to suitability, we could make sure that that process was available to applicants. Of course, continuing as we have, will be a recommendation from me to the Commission, and included in that will be a suitability recommendation. That said, I think to build out that process, this delegation would be necessary.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions for the Executive Director? Then can I have a motion to approve granting the Executive Director the delegation requested? Second. Okay, let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved this delegation of authority to the Executive Director. I would request an update at some subsequent meeting relatively soon, what you have done with this authority, maybe structure and process.
Happy to.
Thank you. I believe that is it for agenda items with respect to discussion. And so I think our next agenda item is to listen to the staff's recommendations of this discuss and vote on. 7 completed license applications. I'm not going to read them all now, but I will go through them one by one and then ask for the recommendation of the staff on each of these, starting with Alternative Therapies Group, Tier 5 Cultivation, MCN 281255.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I will review these as efficiently but as thoroughly as possible. So, as you indicated, the first application for your consideration today, the entity is named Alternative Therapies Group. The application is MCN 281255. The proposed address of the establishment is 10 Industrial Way in Amesbury. The application is for a cultivation license, a Tier 5 indoor cultivation, which, as you know, authorizes a 30,001 to 40,000 square feet of canopy. This applicant has 3 other license applications before the commission, 2 of which are before you today for consideration. The remaining licenses for a retail application. The individuals that have been identified, and they are the same in each application, are Christopher Edwards as an executive, Julio Fuentes as an executive, George Christie as an executive, and Derek Brock as an executive. There are no other entities that have direct or indirect authority over this establishment. This application, or this applicant, is a priority applicant as an existing RMD. They are in compliance with DPH. They intend to be co-located with the adult use business in the town of Amesbury, or city of Amesbury, excuse me. They have a final certificate of registration for dispensing, cultivation, and processing. Their host community agreement was executed with Amesbury on April 3rd, and certification to that effect has been provided. They conducted their community outreach meeting on April 19th and published it within 7 days, or with 7 days notice, in the Newburyport Daily News. Certification of notifications to the municipality as well as the butters has been provided, as well as compliance with the meeting requirements pursuant to our regulations. No objections were raised when the municipal notice was sent to Amesbury. We received a response from the municipality on July 11th, stating the applicant is in fact in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. A summary of their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact includes conducting career fairs in Haverhill and Lynn, scheduling and conducting interviews with individuals from those areas, offering job skill assessments, and providing guidance for interested parties to receive training relevant to the establishment's positions, continuing to make charitable donations to local nonprofit organizations, and finally conducting food drives to benefit local food pantries. As it pertains to suitability, no concerns were raised during the background check on individuals associated with the application, and similarly no concerns were raised on entities associated with the applications. There were no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions, and no disclosures of any occupational license issues to other jurisdictions or Massachusetts, and similarly no disclosures of any business interests in other jurisdictions. They have secured a certificate of good standing from both the Secretary of the Commonwealth as well as the Department of Revenue. Again, they are a proposed cultivation license in this context. They propose that they can be operational immediately upon being granted a final license, as they're an existing RMD and have all human and capital expenditures required to begin operations. They have a special permit to operate the facility, which was granted on June 25th, and no additional construction would be required at that location. They also currently use a point-of-sale system programmed already to virtually separate sales of medical and adult use products. Their proposed hours of operations are Monday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. They've submitted, in compliance with the regulations, summaries of the following plans, policies, and procedures: a security plan, a prevention of diversion plan, a storage and marijuana plan, a transportation plan, inventory procedures, quality control and testing procedures, personnel procedures, dispensing procedures, record-keeping procedures, maintenance of financial records policy, and finally, a diversity plan. All of these summaries are fully compliant with the regulations and have been determined to be substantively compliant with our regulations, and full compliance, of course, will be reviewed during our inspections and will be required before a final license is issued. As far as their diversity plan, they intend to, they have the following goals, which include the following: a diverse workforce, building upon an already diverse workforce of executives and managers, an inclusive work environment, providing an inclusive and flexible environment for employees by identifying and removing any remaining systemic barriers to equitable access, participation, and progression in employment so that all employees have the opportunity to fully contribute to life at the company. They will implement a range of proactive and preventative strategies and programs, including training and professional development opportunities for their employees to raise awareness of equal opportunity discrimination, bullying, and harassment, and provide strategies to prevent this from occurring in the workplace. Similarly, they intend to support domestic violence victims. The applicant aims to create a working environment that allows employees to safely seek support to address issues arising from domestic and family violence. It recognizes that employees may face situations of domestic and family violence that may have an impact on their attendance and productivity at work, and that they are therefore committed to providing support to employees, again, who are affected by domestic and family violence. And lastly, they intend to perform staff surveys, analyze the results, and identify areas for improvement and take corrective steps. Their cultivation plan includes the following: an extremely pure water supply, state-of-the-art climate control, minimal amount of chemicals, and properly sanitized conditions and tools to minimize, to the extent possible, the spread of any contaminants. The summary provides further detail with regard to policies and procedures at each of the following stages: propagation of seeds and clones, cloning and cutting, vegetation, flowering, and harvesting. Because this is a cultivation license, there are no products that will be manufactured. Similarly, they are not planning to sell retail for this license, obviously, so that is not applicable here. Therefore, the Commission staff recommend issuing a provisional license with the following conditions. Final license is subject to the required individual successfully completing a fingerprint-based check of state and national criminal history databases. Final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations. Final license is subject to the inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with the requirements listed in the regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that their facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. The applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to Commission's investigators, agents, and employees upon request. And finally, that the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee pursuant to our regulations. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses to the required criteria. We certify that a due diligence review has been performed, and as of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and demonstrated suitability for licensure. Accordingly, we recommend this applicant for provisional licensure with the previously stated conditions.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the commissioners? Can I have a motion to accept the staff recommendation to grant a provisional license to Alternative Therapies Group MCN 281255 for Tier 5 cultivation?
Second.
Let the record show that Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Flanagan. All in favor? Let the record show that this was unanimously, the recognition of the staff was unanimously approved. Thank you. Alternative therapy groups, again, MRN 281346 for retailing.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Same entity, application MRN 281346. The location of this establishment, though, is different, which is 49 Macy Street in Amesbury. The license is for retail. Again, they have 3 other applications before the commission. The executives are the same: Christopher Edwards, Julio Fuentes, George Christie, and Derek Brock. And as before, there are no other entities associated with the application that have direct or indirect authority over the establishment. They have maintained their priority status and are in compliance with DPH. They intend this adult use retail location will not be co-located with the RMD. Their current RMD dispensary is located in Salem. They have obtained their final certificate of registration for dispensing and cultivation and processing through the Department of Public Health. Their host community agreement was also executed on April 3rd, and certification has been provided to the commission. Their community outreach meeting was also held on April 19th, with publication at least 7 days prior in the Newburyport Daily News. Certification of notice was submitted that included notice to the municipality as well as butters, and they've met the meeting requirements. No objections were communicated to the commission from Amesbury. We received the response on July 11th stating the applicant is in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws, and their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact is the same as their cultivation license, which is to conduct career fairs in Haverhill and Lynn. scheduling and conducting interviews with individuals from those areas, offering job skill assessments, and providing guidance for interested parties to receive training relevant to the establishment's position, continuing to make charitable donations to local nonprofit organizations, and finally conducting food drives to benefit local food pantries. There were no concerns that were arisen during the background check on individuals or on entities associated with the application, and no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions, no disclosures of any past or any occupational license issues, and no disclosure of any business interests in other jurisdiction. They have obtained certificate of good standing from the Secretary of the Commonwealth as well as the Department of Revenue. As far as the management and operations, the proposed timeline to become operational is that the applicant states that construction at this new location will commence in late July and should be completed by mid-September. Construction should be subject to architectural approval from the Commission. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Sunday, 9 a.m. to 6:45 p.m. They've submitted the summaries of the following plans: policies and procedures, their security plan, prevention of diversion plan, storage of marijuana plan, transportation plan, inventory procedures, quality control and testing procedures, personnel policies, dispensing procedures, record-keeping procedures, maintenance of financial records policy, and a diversity plan. They are compliant with submitting all of those summaries. And those summaries have been determined to be substantially compliant with the requirements of our regulations. And of course, full compliance will be reviewed. During inspections, it will be required before a final license is issued. As indicated previously, the summary of their diversity plan includes following goals: diverse workforce, inclusive work environment, support for domestic violence victims, and finally statistics and reassessments. This is a retail license, so there is no cultivation plan. There's also no summary of products to be produced. However, their plan for obtaining marijuana or marijuana products is that they are currently vertically integrated DPH R&D for cultivation, processing, and dispensing medical marijuana. The applicant is also applying for an adult use cultivation and product manufacturing license and plans to supply its products for retail purposes. The staff is recommending issuing a provisional license with the following conditions. Final license is subject to the required individuals successfully completing a fingerprint-based check of state and national criminal history databases. Final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with the requirements listed in our regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that the facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. The applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to Commission investigators, agents, employees upon request, and finally that the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee pursuant to regulations. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses to the required criteria. Commission staff certify that a due diligence review of the application has been performed, and as of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and its suitability for licensure, and accordingly, the applicant is therefore recommended for a provisional license with the previously stated conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments to the Executive Director? Can I have a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to approve a license for alternative therapy, a provisional license for alternative therapy groups, MRN 281346 for retailing? Have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner McBride made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor? Let the record show the Commission unanimously accepts the staff recommendation on this license. Thank you very much. The next license is again for Alternative Therapies Group, MPN 281300 for product manufacturing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, this is Alternative Therapies Group. The proposed address is 10 Industrial Way in Amesbury. This is the same location as the previously considered cultivation license. Again, they have three additional applications pending before the Commission. The executives proposed are the same as before: Christopher Edwards, Julio Fuentes, George Christie, and Derek Brock. And there are no entities that appear to have direct or indirect control over the marijuana establishment that differ from those presented. They have secured their R&D priority status and remain in compliance with DPH. This will be a co-located business with their existing medical operation in Amesbury, and they have obtained their final certificate of registration. The host community agreement was executed on April 3rd. Community outreach meeting and certification has been provided. Community outreach meeting was held on April 19th. Notice was published in the Newburyport Daily News, and notice was sent to the municipality as well as the butters. And finally, they certified that they were in compliance with the meeting requirements. No objections were raised with the commission. We received a response from the municipality on July 11th, stating that they were in compliance with all local zoning, all local ordinances and bylaws. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact is the same as previously stated. To conduct career fairs in Haverhill and Lynn, to schedule and conduct formal interviews with individuals from those areas, offering job skill assessments, and providing guidance for interested parties to receive training relevant to the establishment's positions, continuing to make charitable donations to local nonprofit organizations, and conducting food drives to benefit local food pantries. There were no concerns that were arisen during the background check on individuals or entities, and no disclosures of any past civil or criminal actions, no disclosures of any occupational license issues, and no disclosure of any business interests in other jurisdictions. They secured their standing with the Secretary of the Commonwealth as well as the Department of Revenue. As far as their operations review, management operations review, the proposed timeline to become operational is that they can be operational immediately upon being granted a final license. They're an existing R&D and have all needed human and capital expenditures to begin operations. They've already made those expenditures. A special permit to operate the facility was granted on June 25th, and no additional construction is required at this site. They currently use a point-of-sale system program to virtually separate sales of medical and adult use products. Their proposed hours are Monday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. They submitted the required summaries of plans, policies, and procedures, including a security plan, prevention and diversion plan, storage of marijuana plan, transportation plan, inventory procedures, quality control and testing procedures, personnel procedures, dispensing procedures, record-keeping procedures, maintenance of financial records policy, and diversity plan. They're fully compliant with submitting those summaries, and those summaries have been deemed to be substantially compliant with our regulations. Full compliance will be reviewed during our inspection and will be required before a final license is issued. Their summary of the diversity plan is the same as previously stated: a diverse workforce, an inclusive work environment, support for domestic violence victims, and statistics and reassessments. Again, there's no cultivation plan. This is a product manufacturing license. Therefore, the following products intend to be produced or sold: 1 ounce tinctures, dark chocolates, milk chocolates, white chocolates, capsules, topical salve, distillates, cartridges, oils, and keys. Again, because it's product manufacturing, there's no plan for obtaining marijuana or marijuana products if it's not retail. The commission staff recommends issuing a provisional license with the following conditions. Final license is subject to the required individual successfully completing a fingerprint-based check of state and national criminal history databases. Final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with EPA's regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with the requirements listed in our regulations. Final license subject to inspection or audit to ascertain that facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. The applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to commission's investigators, agents, and employees upon request. And finally, that the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee pursuant to regulations. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, its suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses to the required criteria. Commission staff certify that a due diligence review of the application has been performed, and as of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and its suitability for licensure. Therefore, the applicant is recommended for a provisional license with the previously indicated condition.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments? I just have a question clarification, not on a specific license, but just in general. When we're talking about manufacturer, you say the plan for obtaining marijuana or marijuana products is not applicable. Isn't there a requirement to obtain marijuana if you only have a manufacturing license? So I'm curious about that. Again, it's not specific to this application going forward.
It's in that context, though, I guess perhaps it's how we present it as far as the executive summary. I try to break out if it's a specific license type. So their cultivation plan, their product manufacturing plan, or where they intend to obtain final product.
I understand that, but would we want and should we want to know if you're an intermediate like manufacturer where you're obtaining your raw material?
So of course we do, absolutely. That will be something that is, so this is really a summary of the overall application. If that information was not presented to the commission, and I guess I'm going to speak very broadly to any
This was a broad question.
Right, we would want to know that information, and certainly intend to follow up based on that information when we visit for an inspection of where they intend to secure. So for instance, in a manufacturing context, if they intend to produce extracts, where they intend on getting flower right from them in order to do that. So the way it's presented here is if it's a cultivation license.
No, I understand exactly what you're saying. I guess I'm asking if it would be appropriate. And, everything's in the license, and we all obviously look at the license application, not just your review. But in terms of the way you present the review, it strikes me that at all stages, where do you get the input for that stage would be valuable information.
And that is something that we do secure.
Okay, great. Okay. Unless there are any questions, can I have a recommendation, or can I have a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to alternative therapy groups, MPN 281300, for product manufacturing? Have a second, please?
Second.
Let the record show Commissioner Flanagan made a motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor? Let the record show that the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation. Thank you. The next four that we're going to process are for a New England treatment access. The first is MCM 281267 for Tier 6 cultivation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, the entity is New England Treatment Access. The proposed address is 5 Forge Parkway in Franklin. License type before you for considerations of Tier 6 cultivation, which is an indoor operation of 40,001 to 50,000 square feet. This applicant has also applied for 4 additional licenses from the Commission, product manufacturing, 2 retail, and then finally a research license. The list of required individuals and their business roles is before you. I'm going to endeavor not to read each of them each and every time. It is a sizable list, but of course this summary will be available on our website. I also don't want to badger anyone's name. Next, there are a number of entities associated with the establishment that have some either direct or indirect control. They include CBPV Holdings, Reed Management Services, Eddie Out LLC, Double Creek Enterprises LLC, HCK Enterprises, Aegis USA, and Aegis MA LLC. All of those entities have been checked as a part of our background check as well. This applicant is an RMD priority applicant, and they are in compliance with the Department of Public Health regulations, and they intend to be co-located in medical adult use establishments in Franklin. They have obtained their final certificate of registration at this location for cultivation and processing. Their host community agreement was executed on April 13th, and certification has been provided. The community outreach meeting was held on March 27th. Notice was published in the Milford Daily News at least 7 days prior, and they certified that notice was sent to the municipalities and the butters and certified that their compliance with the meeting requirements. There were no objections communicated to the Commission. The Commission received the response from the municipality on July 11th, stating that the applicant is in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact includes partnering with Roxbury Community College. Parts of Roxbury fall into the disproportionate areas of Boston to develop a 4-credit and paid internship program for students to receive training in marijuana business management. The goal of the program is to assist in the cost of a college education while providing students with the skills to enter the industry. And for non-students, the applicant plans to utilize Roxbury Community College as a recruitment resource in an effort to reach qualified community members for employment opportunities. There were no concerns that were raised during the background check on individuals or entities, and there were no disclosures that are presented suitability issues for past or civil or criminal actions, no disclosures of any occupational license issues. I'm sorry, there were disclosures, however, none of them presented suitability issues. And finally, there are several interests in other jurisdictions, including the entities that I've indicated, Aegis, Reed, HFK, have an interest in the Delaware Limited Liability Company, but there have been no issues from this disclosure. They've obtained their certificate of good standing from both the Secretary of the Commonwealth as well as the Department of Revenue. Their proposed timeline to become operational is within 2 weeks from being issued a provisional license. The applicant will seek approval from DPs to transfer any excess product from their medical operations to their adult use operation. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Sunday, 6 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. And they submitted the following summaries for plans, policies, and procedures: a security plan, prevention and conversion plan, storage of marijuana plan, transportation plan, inventory procedures, quality control and testing procedures, personnel procedures, dispensing procedures, record-keeping procedures, maintenance of financial records policy, and a diversity plan. They were fully compliant with submitting all the summaries, and all the summaries have been deemed to be substantially compliant with our regulations. Full compliance will be reviewed during our inspections and will be required before a final license is issued. The diversity plan includes the following goals and objectives, which is implementing diversity programs that will include maintaining an open dialogue regarding inclusion, training events designed to bring awareness about diversity, and setting goals and tracking progress on diversity initiatives. Recruiting a diverse workforce, conducting career fairs and training for individuals, including those in areas of disproportionate impact. Their summary of their cultivation plan is the following. Their cultivation plan and methods used in the following stages: clone and vegetative stage, flowering stage, quality control, handling, and sanitary procedures, and environmental services. Again, this is a cultivation license, so there's no products to be produced, and no plan to obtain marijuana or marijuana products. The Commission staff recommend issuing the provisional license with the following conditions. Final license is subject to the required individuals successfully completing a fingerprint-based check of state and national criminal history databases. Final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with EPA's regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with requirements listed in our regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that its facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. The applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to Commission investigators, agents, and employees upon request. And finally, that the provisional license is subject to the payment of the appropriate license fee pursuant to regulations. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses to the required criteria. We certify that a due diligence review of the application has been performed, and as of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and its suitability for licensure, and accordingly, we therefore recommend a provisional license with the previously mentioned conditions.
Any comments or questions? Commissioner Connell.
With regard to the disclosures that were made, how was it determined that they did not present suitability issues?
In the context of any disclosures that are made, it's first evaluated against any of the exclusion provisions in the Commission's regulations. So if there were a civil disclosure, for instance, that would not rise to the level of being a criminal act, that would render either a presumptive negative or a mandatory negative. And we know it, we confirm it through our background check, but it's not identified as being a suitability-related incident or disclosure.
Other questions or comments? If I can ask for a motion, please, to accept the staff recommendation to approve a provisional license for New England Treatment Access, MCM 281267, Tier 6 cultivation. Can I have a second, please? Let the record show Commissioner Doyle made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Title. All in favor?
Aye.
Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation on MCM 281267. Thank you. Next, again, New England Treatment Access, MRN 281240, retailer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a retail license proposed for New England Treatment Access. The address is 118 Cons Street in Northampton. Again, it's a retail application. New England Treatment Access has 4 other applications pending before the Commission: cultivation, retail, research, and product manufacturing. The individuals listed on this application are the same as previously. The same with the entities, with the various control over indirect or direct over the entity. They are an R&D priority applicant, and they are in compliance with DPH. They will intend to be co-located with their medical business in Northampton, the R&D in Northampton, and they've obtained their final certificate of registration at this location for dispensary. The host community agreement was executed on March 29th, and certification has been provided. The community outreach meeting was held on March 21st. Notice was published at least 7 days prior in the Daily Hampshire Gazette. The applicant certified that notice was sent to the municipality as well as any of others, and that they certified their compliance with the various meeting requirements. No objections were raised relative to the application. We did receive a response from the municipality on July 11th, stating that the applicant is in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. A summary of their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact was the same as previously indicated, that the applicant plans to partner with Roxbury Community College and develop a for-credit and paid internship program for students to receive training in marijuana business management. For non-students, the applicant plans to utilize Roxbury Community College as a recruitment resource in an effort to reach qualified community members for employment opportunities. There were no concerns that were raised during the background check on individuals associated with the application, and no concerns raised regarding entities associated with the application. As far as any past civil or criminal actions, there were disclosures, however, none presented suitability questions relative to, again, past civil or occupational license issues. There were disclosed other business interests in other jurisdictions, as indicated previously for Aegis, Reed, HFK, have interest in Delaware Limited Liability Company. There were no issues that were raised during this disclosure, in the course of this disclosure. A secured certificate of good standing from the Secretary of the Commonwealth, as well as the Department of Revenue. The proposed timeline to become operational. In 2 weeks from being issued a provisional license, they will seek approval from DPH to transfer any excess product from the medical operation to the adult use operation. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Sunday, 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. They submitted the summaries of following plans, policies, and procedures: a security plan, prevention and diversion plan, storage of marijuana plan, transportation plan, inventory procedures, quality control and testing procedures, personnel procedures, dispensing procedures, record-keeping procedures, maintenance of financial records policy, and diversity plan. They were compliant with submitting all the summaries, and those summaries have been deemed to be substantially compliant with our regulations. Full compliance will be reviewed during our inspection process and will be required before a final license is issued. The diversity plan was the same as previously indicated, implementing diversity programs that will include maintaining an open dialogue regarding inclusion, training events designed to bring awareness about diversity, and setting goals and tracking progress on diversity initiatives, recruiting a diverse workforce, and conducting career fairs and trainings for individuals, including those in areas of disproportionate impact. This is a retail license, so there's no cultivation plan and no production plan, to address the last question, Mr. Chairman. That said, because it's a retail license, they have established cultivation and processing R&D operations. The applicant's long-term plan is to be self-sufficient cultivation through retail operation. Their initial goal is for its marijuana supply is to apply and receive DPH approval to transfer excess medical marijuana supply to their adult use operation. The Commission staff recommends issuing a provisional license with the following conditions. The final license is subject to the required individual successfully completing a fingerprint-based check of state and national criminal history databases. The final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations. The final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with the requirements listed in our regulations. The final license is subject to the inspection and audit to ascertain its facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. The applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to commission investigators, agents, and employees upon request. And finally, that the provisional license is subject to the payment of appropriate license fee pursuant to our regulations. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth, its suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses to the required criteria. We certify that the due diligence review of the application has been performed, and as of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and its suitability for licensure. Accordingly, we therefore recommend a provisional license with the following or the previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Powell?
This is MRN 281240.
Yes.
They're located in Northampton,
That's correct.
and their positive impact plan is to partner with Roxbury Community College.
That's correct.
Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Commissioner.
I don't think this requires a vote, but given that so many applications are coming in before the positive impact guidance was issued, can we agree as a policy that upon renewal, all of these applicants will follow up on their plans?
It's certainly something we can build into our renewal process, absolutely. And similarly, related, not specific to this application, but related, is that if we were to reopen an application and request additional information, say for instance related to the positive impact plan, we would circulate that guidance to that applicant as guidance for them. So in other words, we're seeking more information, here's guidance that the commission has put forward.
Any other questions or comments? May I have a motion to approve the staff recommendation to issue a provisional license to doing the treatment access MRN 281240 retailer? May I have a second, please? Let the record show Commissioner Doyle made the motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner McBride. All in favor? Let the record show the Commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation. The next one is New England Treatment Access, MRN 281287, retailer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you indicated, this is a retail license proposed for New England Treatment Access. The location of the establishment is 160 Washington Street, Brookline. Again, this applicant has submitted 4 additional applications to the Commission: cultivation, retail, research, and product manufacturing. The individuals identified are the same as previously referenced, as the same with the entities in their role as either indirect or direct, with either indirect or direct control. They have secured their R&D priority status, and they're in compliance with DPH. This is a proposed co-location facility in the town of Brookline. They have secured their final certificate of registration at this location for dispensing. The host community agreement was executed on April 24th, and certification has been provided. The community outreach meeting was held on April 12th, with notice published at least 7 days prior in the Brookline tab. The applicant certified that notice was sent to municipalities and abutters, and they further certified that they're in compliance with the Commission's meeting requirements. There were no objections communicated to the Commission. A response was received from the municipality on July 18th, stating that the applicant is in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact is the same, which is to partner with Roxbury Community College to develop a 4-credit and paid internship program for students to receive training in marijuana business management. For non-students, the applicant plans to utilize Roxbury Community College as a recruitment resource in an effort to reach qualified community members for employment opportunities. There were no concerns raised during the background check on individuals or entities. There were disclosures for the applicant's past civil or criminal actions, as well as for occupational license issues. Those disclosures presented no suitability issues. Similarly, there were disclosures of business interests in other jurisdictions from Aegis, Reed, HFK, as they have interest in a Delaware limited liability company. No issues arise from this disclosure. They've secured their certificate of good standing from the Secretary of the Commonwealth as well as the Department of Revenue. As far as their management operations review, their timeline to become operational is within 2 weeks of being issued a provisional license. The applicant will seek approval from DPH to transfer excess product from the medical operation to their adult use operation. The proposed hours of operation are Monday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 6:45 p.m., and Sunday, 12 p.m. to 4:45 p.m. They submitted summaries of the following plans, policies, and procedures: security plan, prevention of diversion plan, storage of marijuana plan, transportation plan, inventory procedures, quality control and testing procedures, personnel procedures, dispensing procedures, record-keeping procedures, maintenance of financial records policy, and diversity plan. The applicant is fully compliant with submitting these summaries, and those summaries have been deemed to be substantially compliant with the requirements listed in our regulations. Full compliance will be reviewed during inspections and will be required before a final license is issued. The diversity plan is the same as previously indicated, which is to implement diversity programs that will include maintaining an open dialogue regarding inclusion, training events designed to bring awareness about diversity, and setting goals and tracking progress on diversity initiatives, recruiting a diverse workforce, and conducting career fairs and trainings for individuals, including those in areas of disproportionate impact. This is a retail license, so there's no cultivation plan or products to be manufactured. As far as their plan for obtaining marijuana or marijuana products, the applicant has established cultivation and processing R&D operations. The long-term plan is to be a self-sufficient cultivation through retail operation. Their goals for its marijuana supply to apply and receive DPH approval for transfer of any excess medical marijuana supply to the adult use operation. Commission staff recommends issuing a provisional license with the following conditions. Final license is subject to the required individual successfully completing a fingerprint-based check of state and national criminal history databases. Final license is subject to certification that the applicant remains in compliance with DPH regulations. Final license is subject to an inspection and audit to ascertain compliance with the requirements listed in our regulations. Final license is subject to inspection and audit to ascertain that the facilities are compliant with all applicable state and local codes, bylaws, ordinances, and regulations. The applicant shall cooperate with and provide information to commission investigators, agents, and employees upon request. And finally, that the provisional license is subject to the payment of appropriate license fee pursuant to our regulations. This recommendation is based on the applicant's demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and suitability for licensure, and upon the evaluation of the thoroughness of the applicant's responses to the required criteria. Commission staff certify that the due diligence review of the application has been performed, and as of this date, the applicant has demonstrated compliance with the laws and regulations of the Commonwealth and its suitability for licensure. Accordingly, we therefore recommend a provisional license with the previously mentioned conditions.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the commission? And, may I ask for a motion, please, to approve the staff recommendation to approve a provisional license to New England Treatment Access, MRN 281287 for retailing? Have a second, please? Let the record show Commissioner McBride made a motion to approve, seconded by Commissioner Doyle. All in favor? Let the record show the commission unanimously approved the staff recommendation on MRN 281287. Thank you. The last one for review today and consideration is New England Treatment Access, MPN 281306, product manufacturer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you've indicated, this is a product manufacturing license for New England Treatment Access located at 5 Forge Parkway in Franklin. This applicant has also applied for 4 additional licenses to the commission: cultivation, 2 retail, and 1 research. The owners or managers or individuals tied to the business are the same. Similarly, any entities with direct or indirect control are also the same. They are a priority applicant, has an existing RMD. That RMD is in compliance with DPH. They intend to be co-located with their RMD in Franklin. The RMD is obtaining their final certificate of registration at this location for cultivation and processing. The host community agreement was executed on April 13th and certification was provided. The community outreach meeting was held on March 27th with notice published at least 7 days prior in the Milford Daily News. The applicant has certified the notice was sent to both the municipalities as well as any abutters, and they've also certified that the meeting was held in compliance with our requirements. There were no objections communicated to the commission. We received a response from the municipality on July 11th, stating that the applicant is in compliance with all local ordinances and bylaws. Their plan to positively impact areas of disproportionate impact is the same as previously indicated, with plans to partner with Roxbury Community College to develop a 4-credit and paid internship for students to receive training in marijuana business management. For non-students, the applicant plans to utilize Roxbury Community College as a recruitment resource in an effort to reach qualified community members for employment opportunities. There are no concerns raised during the background check on individuals or entities associated with the application. There were disclosures relative to past civil and criminal actions that were occupational license issues. However, those disclosures did not present suitability issues. Similarly, there were disclosures of business interests in other jurisdictions for Aegis, Reed, HFK, as they have interest in the Delaware limited